Brian, good morning.
Good morning, Chair. How are you?
I'm very well, and yourself?
I'm okay. Thank you, Chair.
Good, man. Please, can you flight the agenda for the meeting?
Recording in progress.
Chairperson, morning. You look
Morning,
set.
morning. I'm sorry. Good morning, colleagues. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. It seems like
morning.
you are set for some canvassing work, eh? Given that you are in an electable position to return to Parliament, so well done on that one.
Well, no, I'm not too sure. The line hasn't been crossed as yet, so that is coming.
Good luck.
Yeah, no, thanks. And colleagues, I don't know. It's 10 o'clock, and they've just received a request. In fact, it's about 15 minutes ago from the acting SecDef that there's a power outage in her area. I think there's a cable theft, and now forcing them to relocate to another place. And they were relocating to another place where they'll be connecting from. So they asked for a 15 minutes delay, but I don't know. There is a legacy report. Is Velem available? I thought Velem was not available.
Good morning, Chair. I'm available for this meeting. It's next week that I'm not available. So
it's next week that you're not available.
Yes,
oh,
Chair.
See, Velem, I'm not in Cape Town. I'm in Durban. For some reason, I couldn't leave Durban this week, but possibly next week, eh?
No problem, Chair. We can speak. That's right.
Okay, no, thank you so much.
Chairperson,
yes,
Chairperson, while I agree with you that we can proceed with either minutes or the legacy report, that give us an idea of option. Reports. However, I have received from someone else this morning as well that there's I think it's a cable theft in Pretoria that is obviously affected the Arms Corps building and where DOD is. I'm not sure at this stage whether it is inside the property, because I know that at one stage there was a problems inside our property as well with regards to cables. If it's outside, it's obviously Tshwane's problem. Tshwane municipality, they must correct that. If it's inside, then hopefully the SecDef will tell us about that, because that will indicate to possible bad actors getting access to the property and stealing the cables inside the property, which I hope is not the case. But maybe she can tell us. And,
you are right. Otherwise, it's a serious statement if it is inside the property. If you look
absolutely.
The location of the Arms Corps building.
And that's where DOD is also. So
DOD also, it's very far from the road, and you can only go to Arms Corps or DOD buildings if you just no way that you would say I'm passing. Okay, that's fine. They will indicate. I think it's just
hopefully she can just tell us that.
Okay, that's fine.
Because if it is a threat, if it is a threat to our national installations, then we have to take notice of that, because that's not acceptable.
All right, no, that's fine. We will talk about it. Maybe let's deal with the minutes. Before that, let me welcome all of you colleagues, and thank you. This is one but last meeting. I'm not too sure if we will have meetings in the next term. I haven't seen the program for the next term as yet, and but certainly this one is last but one in this term, The last one is next week on Wednesday. And apologies. Are there any apologies, Brian? But before you give me the apologies for noting, the minister has apologized. There's a bereavement in the family. And so we are putting her in our prayers. And two, the deputy minister is also not in the meeting. He has another appointment with the provincial government. So he had to take his senior team or departmental officials with him to this meeting in Pietermaritzburg. But the good thing is that we're not dealing with DMV, we're dealing with DOD staff today. So that's the apologies from the two ministers. Brian, are there any further apologies?
No, there are no further apologies, Chair.
No further apologies. Do you have the quorum?
That is correct, Chair.
We do. Okay. Right. Okay, colleagues, we are all welcome. So I can see Luyanda Manguku is the chairperson of the Audit Committee. Luyanda, good morning.
Good morning, Chair. Thank you so much. Thank
you very much. And Bali, Tsotetsi, and Edward Gutsie from AG, but they are not here in that formally, but they do pitch up in our meetings. I'm just acknowledging them in passing.
Good morning, Chair. Thank you.
Morning. Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gutsie. Acting Silok, good morning. Right.
Good morning, Chair.
Yes, good morning. Thank you very much. All right. Okay, I don't see anyone from. Okay, so no, it's fine. Let me acknowledge everyone present and let's start the meeting. We'll start with the minutes. Brian, how many sets do we have?
We have one set, Chair.
We have one set. Please flag the minutes.
Are they visible, Chair?
Yes, they are. Minutes of the 13th of March, 2024. We're dealing with DMV issues. It was a briefing on their Audit Action Plan. We also received a briefing from the DMV Audit Committee. We dealt with correspondence and the minutes, and we closed the meeting. So this was the attendance. Just move. Attendance for correction, colleagues, please check. Page 2, corrections. Page 3. Corrections. Page 4. Page 5. Thank you. Please, Brian, correct the spelling. There is a spelling that needs to be corrected. Ensure that that happens. Colleagues, I present these minutes for adoption. Is any mover or seconder?
Lekwase moves, Chair.
The first moves, a seconder.
Honorable Chair, seconds, Chair.
At seconds, thank you very much. The minutes actually adopted. Right, let's then quickly move to the legacy report. Let me invite Willem to take us through quickly.
Thank you, Chair. Can you see my screen on your side?
Yes, I can see it.
Thank you, Chair and members. Chair, members, you may recall that in the first, I think it was the first or the second meeting of this term, we did a detailed presentation on the draft legacy report for this committee for the 6th Parliament. So we did go through this in detail, and we also offered an opportunity for members to also go through it again in their own time and let us know if there are any significant changes that they would like. We didn't receive any substantial input on the matter, so we hope that members concur with what is in the report. Since we went through this in detail already, I will just skim through the main sections again, so members are familiar with it, and highlight 2 additional matters that we added for your consideration today, based on the work of this term of Parliament. So key issues that arose that might need follow-up in the next Parliament. I have those in red, and I will show them to you for consideration during the adoption. But the plan then, Chair, today, if there's no significant amendments required, that we will adopt the legacy report today, since it's almost the last meeting, and that this will be the formal and final legacy report for this committee for the 6th Parliament. So just to remind members, the first section of this document was the key highlights. This is a standard format, again, that we got from Parliament to use for this legacy report. We've got the key highlights, which looks back at the work of the committee and the achievements of the committee during the 6th Parliament. And here we looked at the departments and specifically. We looked at key work around the Department of Defence and key work around the Department of Military Veterans. And here we added, towards the end of the 6th Parliament, the committee received a list of grievances from several managers in the DMV, which may require follow-up in the 7th Parliament. I will get to this later as well, in slightly more detail in a longer sentence, but this matter came up very late in the 6th Parliament, as members will recall, and it's unlikely that this committee will be able to dispense of it fully, and therefore we added it as a suggestion here for the 7th committee to follow up. Similar key areas for future work, in terms of the DMV, looking at grievances by the DMV employees, and then also based on the previous meetings and today's meeting, is further engagements with the Auditor General on the issue around material irregularities. So that's the first section, it's basically a synopsis of the whole report. So if we go into the actual report, it firstly provided an overview of the departments under the oversight of this committee, the departments and the entities, the functions of the committee, and the method of work of the committee, how this committee actually conducts its oversight, and then the purpose of this report, which is to look back at the 6th Parliament and also make proposals towards the 7th Parliament for oversight. In terms of key statistics, we updated these figures from the first draft that members had in the beginning of the term. In total, we updated the final total numbers here. In total, there was 127 meetings of this committee over the parliamentary term. 2 pieces of legislation processed and 6 oversight trips conducted, as well as 1 international study tour. Then looking at briefings from the public, there's no real legislation engagements required, but the committee did have some other engagements with stakeholders. We note those here, such as the colloquium on civil military relations and engagements with AMD, as well as the Khoisan Nation Self-Defense Unit. That matter was dealt with by the committee. In terms of legislation, there was the Defence Amendment Bill, as well as the Military Discipline Bill that ultimately got withdrawn. And we note a number of the challenges here, as well as the issues for follow-up on this matter. There's a list of oversight trips undertaken, as well as the reporting days in the ATCs of these oversight visits. And we also updated the last two that was not in your draft version in the first meeting of this term, the visit to the Arms Corps Dockyard, as well as the Loatla Training Center. Those reports have since been tabled and considered, so we included the ATC dates of those reports as well. Then study tour, members will recall, this has also been included, as well as a number of challenges and issues for follow-up in the 7th Parliament stemming from the study tour report, specifically around DOD Human Resources Management Strategy, which was one of the key outcomes of the study tour. International agreements, it's just the Maputo Protocol that was considered by the committee. No statutory appointments, but we did note here that the committee noted a number of vacancies in the department, and this would be important for the 7th Parliament to follow up. I won't repeat everything that we said in the previous meetings. No interventions, no petitions, obligations in terms of the legislation refers largely to the BRRR, and this committee was quite successful in using the BRRR and the recommendations specifically to National Treasury. So given the success of the committee in this regard, and given the achievements of actually bringing about or garnering additional funds for the departments for specific ring-fence purposes, we included all the recommendations in the BRRRs throughout the years, as well as National Treasury's responses, as this provides a nice flow it provides a nice flow from the over the 5 years, and it shows how National Treasury over the years responded, and it also captures key issues that this committee grappled with, which then would guide the 7th Parliament as well. Then outstanding issues, I won't go through this in detail, but we arranged them per area of responsibility. For the Minister of Defence, the issue around ongoing vacancies, further engagements required with the AG on the specific recommendation that this committee made to the AG. There was already an engagement during this term, but the 7th Parliament will have to follow up with the AG on this specific recommendation in the BRRR. Then we added here for members to consider further engagements on material irregularities. The committee held several engagements with the AG on material irregularities noted across the departments. These irregularities require follow-up and constant monitoring in the 7th Parliament, with specific focus on the department's audit action plans as well. So that is for consideration, members, for inclusion. That was not in your draft, but perhaps prudent to include in the final legacy report so that the 7th Parliament pays attention to this matter, as will also be discussed today. Then other issues for follow-up, issues around border safeguarding technology, which will be dealt with today as well to an extent. But this is a matter, as members will see from today's presentation, there's funds allocated for the 25-26 financial year and the outer years of the MTF. So definitely important for the 7th Parliament to follow up on this. And also to note that the success of the 6th Parliament in getting actual funds allocated for this purpose. So to see this through and to see that this was actually implemented. Then issues around prime mission equipment upgrades, which will be touched on today as well. Definitely focus in the 7th Parliament is required on the issue of over-expenditure on compensation of employees and the SANF Human Resources Management Strategy. Arms Corps DOD contract management, which again will be highlighted today in today's briefing. For the Minister of Defence, the future strategic direction of the department, issues around consequence management, and specific consequence managed inquiries, which might require follow-up to see that they were finalized, such as issues around one military hospital and irregular expenditure from the medication from Cuba. For DMV, database management, as well as vacancies and departmental capacity. And then again, you add here for members to consider, towards the end of the sixth parliament, the committee received a list of grievances and allegations from managers and other employees at the DMV. The committee introduced the document for consideration and also requested responses from the department. Further engagement on the grievances and allegations will be required in the 7th Parliament to ensure thorough oversight of the matter. So that, Chair and members, is for your consideration to allude the 7th Parliament to this matter and for them to follow up on the matter further if this committee is unable to finalize the matter within the next week. For the CCB, issues around revenue generation and tourism at the castle, and then Armscor and the DOD, the 7th Parliament should focus on issues around cyber defense. This committee touched on it, but there's significant scope for this to be increased. No matters referred from the Speaker. And then recommendations, final recommendations. These are more administrative recommendations that we included, as well as overarching oversight focus area recommendations. This is just a synopsis of what was presented earlier, of the key issues that require further work in the 7th Parliament. And then there's a master attendance list for the committee as we stand on 18 March 2024, the members of this committee, as well as the parliamentary staff of this committee. Chair, members, that is the final legacy report for your consideration. Please note those 2 additions that we made in red that relates to for the 7th Parliament to follow up on the issue around the complaints and grievances from DMV, as well as the material irregularities. I'll take your guidance on that one, Chair, but the rest is exactly the same as was presented to you in detail about 2 months ago. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, colleagues. Let's deal with the additions first. The color coding is red. Are there any objections to us including those issues?
Chairperson, not from my side. I think, in fact, it helps to make it more complete as we conclude our business for the 6th Parliament. And it's actually a fantastic report. I am very proud of this report and the work that we have done. So to Wilhelm and to our staff, really, Brian and everybody, one can only commend them. If it wasn't for them, we wouldn't have received such a complete and thorough report. So I support that very much, and I think it absolutely makes it more complete. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any objection?
No, Chair.
Yes, sir.
No, thanks. I think one must concur with Honorable Marais, because it is giving a true reflection of what is happening and what is expected. So I support the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The report is seconded. I don't see any objection. Thabo, do you have any objection?
No objection, sir.
So the report is duly adopted. Thank you very much, Wilhelm, Brian, and the team for this work. I think you have been able to maintain the standards despite the fact that the committee section or the team supporting us lost one member to another committee. or was promoted within the legislature as divisions, but that did not affect the operations of this committee. So thank you very much for standing in even for those members as well. I know you had to double up to help the committee perform its work without any undue delay. Thank you very much for your support and assistance. All right.
Chairperson,
Yes,
if I
I
may
must also thank the department. Yes, I will come back to you, Mary. You must also thank the department there as well.
Okay.
And who were very helpful. And there was never a time when I felt that the committee was disrespected or they were not cooperating with us. And no, thank you very much. The Auditor General's Office, their diligence and their readiness to assist and empower the committee has enabled us, firstly, to grasp the issues, especially some of us who are new in the committee, and be able to discharge our mandate. And I have no regrets that the committee was able to do its best and without fear, favor, or prejudice. It's one committee where there was never a time when I felt that we were politicking, and in fact, there was no reason to politic. You can't politic on matters defense, and certainly you can't. We must stand united all the time because it's about the defense of our country and the defense of the people as a whole. Mara, you wanted to say something, sir?
Yes, I just wanted to ask if the final report with the corrections now as adopted, if that can just be again sent to us for our records. It'll be much appreciated. Thank you very much.
Yes, please do. Brian, you can just attend to that and also send it to all stakeholders, let me say relevant stakeholders, H's office, the office of the SecDef, and the office of the acting Director General of the department. And also extend it to the entities as well, the CEO of CCP and the CEO of AMSCO. All right.
Noted, Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We can now then move to the next item. DOD, I think I can see DOD now on the platform. And DOD, welcome. Your apology was conveyed. And we've just dealt with the minutes as well as with our legacy report. We now can move to the item that was, what item is Audit Action Plans, Brian? Let me
Chair, the first item is on the ring-fenced funding, Chair.
Oh, ring-fenced funding. Thank you very much. Right. Let me invite the acting SecDef to make an introductory remarks on that item. SecDef.
Okay, thank you. I was muted. Thank you very much.
Okay, sure. Over to you. Just your introductory remarks, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I was saying we apologize for joining in late. We had a power outage at DHQ, and we are sitting at the Waterkloof Air Base in order to join this meeting. So thank you very much for being patient with us. We're supposed to be presenting our response with action plans, response to the Auditor General findings. We have done that. I must say that the action plans were ready a bit late because the first ones that were submitted by services and divisions were not satisfactory to me and the chief, and therefore we had to send them back. But we are going to present the progress of what has been done, Chair. I am with the acting CFO who will take us through. I'm also with General Ramanswane, the Chief of Staff, as well as the support team from the law divisions, as well as the HR, environment, and internal audit.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, I have the joint operations who will present the expenditure on the ring-fenced budget allocation for border safeguarding. It will be done by Gerald Kundu. So, Chair, if we go by your agenda, it means we are going to take that one first, unless the Chair allows us to continue with the action plans.
Okay, let's do the action plans if you are ready.
Thank you.
Thank you. Over to you.
Good morning, Chair and members of the Portfolio Committee on Defense. Chair, I would just like to confirm whether if the screen is visible.
Yes, it is, sir. Good morning.
Okay. Good morning, Chair. May I proceed, Chair?
Yes, you may, sir.
Thank you, sir. As the Secretary has indicated, we received our audit report last year from the Office of the Auditor General on the 1st of August 2023. And we were qualified on 3 account balances: the goods and services and related investments within the SDA, so that is the sensitive environment of the SDA, the movable tangible assets, where the AG raised concerns around the qualification of how we manage our assets over the last 3 years, and then the completeness of irregular expenditure, which is unfortunately one of those findings that we've also been qualified on over the last 3 years. The AG also raised findings relating to the findings on the usefulness and reliability of performance information. Chair, I'm just trying to get my screen sorted out here. Chair, with regard to the qualifications, within the Department of Defense, the services and divisions develop and finalize action plans. These action plans are now managed in different... Chair, may I proceed? I see there's someone else speaking in the background.
Yeah, it happens when you are in someone else's house. So you may continue.
Okay, thank you, Chair. The action plans are consolidated by the Finance Division and then presented to the Accountability Management Forum or Committee on a monthly basis. These meetings are chaired by the Secretary for Defense, attended by the Chief of the SNDF, and attended by all chiefs of service and divisions. And at these meetings, the chiefs present feedback on their action plans to this forum. It was quite unfortunate, and the chair of the audit committee, when he does his presentation, will inform you that within the first 6 months, that these action plans were not completed because it took time for us to consolidate this information from the different environments. Once these documents are finalized, the internal audit division then audits these recommendations and these action plans to ensure that the service chiefs and the action plans that have been presented have been addressed. So the findings have been addressed. Relating to the special defense account, where we have received qualifications based on the inherent risk that exists within that environment, where the Office of the Auditor General has got full access to the sensitive environment of the SDA. It must also be noted that with our budget in that financial year of 54.5 billion, 0.64% of that relates to the sensitive environment. So we transfer approximately about 2.8 billion into the special defense account to manage the transactions within the sensitive environment and the special defense account. Out of that, 12.7%, which is approximately 350 million of the 2.8 billion that is within the special defense account, relates to the sensitive environment of the SDA. So in principle, the AG has 99.4%, or they have access to 99.4% of the spending of the Department of Defense. But due to the inherent risk within that environment, it becomes a bit difficult for them to place an assurance over what we have provided and recorded. It must also be noted that this does not only relate to the only the Department of Defense, but this has an impact on the crime intelligence and state security. So the whole COVID environment have this challenge. We do report the findings and the transactions that occur within the sensitive environment to the Portfolio Committee on Intelligence, who provide an oversight over the sensitivity of that environment. Over the last 6 years, they have indicated that they will interact among themselves and the Office of the Auditor General to find a lasting solution to how to audit the sensitive environment of these entities. Unfortunately, this engagement did not yield any fruit over the last 6 years. So these 3 entities do get qualified with regard to their sensitive environment. The finding that has been recurring over the years relates to the completeness of the recorded irregular expenditure in our financial statements. So this relates to how we manage the procurement in the Department of Defense. The year under review, our total balance, not what we incurred, but the total balance of irregular expenditure recorded in our annual report is 15 billion. Out of that 15 billion, 10 billion relates to the underfunding of the compensation of employees due to the National Treasury reducing the budget of the Department of Defense. So that impact over the last 6 years gave us an irregular expenditure balance of 10 billion. 5 billion of this relates to procurement-related prescripts, where the AG indicated that we do not manage our procurements in terms of the prescripts. 3 billion of this, last year we incurred 3 billion unauthorized expenditure because we could not continue utilizing goods and services allocation to fund the underfunding of the compensation of employees. So we had to exceed our total budget due to our dwindling budget that we have received over the last MTEF. So we also incurred unauthorized expenditure by exceeding the budget allocation from National Treasury. We have informed the Portfolio Committee on numerous occasions that we have had engagements with National Treasury on the underfunding of the compensation of employees. Unfortunately, they did promise to condone this 10 billion that related to underfunding of the compensation of employees. But as at the reporting date, as of where we are today, we haven't received any approval from them yet to condone this irregular expenditure relating to the underfunding of the compensation of employees. The controls we've also put in place related to the mobility exit mechanism, where we were rejuvenating our forces to try and find a way to balance the compensation of employees allocation. We received over the 2 previous financial years, 1.8 billion from National Treasury to fund this mobility exits. However, the actual expenditure relating to exiting of our members via severance packages and the payment of leave days through the departmental liabilities on exiting any member actually results in double the allocation that we received of 1.8 billion. That was supposed to assist us in reducing our numbers, but it did not reduce the actual expenditure relating to exiting our members because that was not funded by the fiscus. We had to find the money internally. Hence the incurrence of the unauthorized expenditure of 3 billion in the last financial year. It should also be noted that there has been considerable savings made through the exit of our members. But due to the continuous tasking and employment of the SNDF forces, this unfortunately has eroded the savings that were made through the utilization of reserves to manage the taskings of the forces of the defense force. In the previous year, we got qualified on the employee benefits, so that's employee cost. But what we have done as a department is we did everything to try and solve that qualification. So in the last financial year, we resolved that qualification, but there were control weaknesses within the HR environment that the AG raised, and we will discuss those now. So the first one related to the reserve force members, where the AG raised findings around the call-up, the contracting, and the call-up of our reserve force members, where the AG indicated that they did not have sufficient evidence to support the call-ups. What the HR environment did was they hosted a workshop with all services and divisions to identify the root causes of how we were managing the reserve force call-ups. The CHR issued an instruction on the 6th of December to manage this specific finding from the AG, and service and divisions do provide progress on how they're managing this whole management of reserve force members within the HR environment, and they do report to the HR board. The Chief Defense Reserves is also in the process of developing an overarching instruction on how to manage the utilization of reserve forces. We've also enhanced the system, the personal system with CETA on how to manage and connect the reserve force leave days and all transactions within that environment. The AG also raised concerns around suspensions of our employees without, we suspend our members, but we do not manage the suspension in time, and we don't finalize the cases around those suspensions. Within the PSAP environment, we had 19 employees that were suspended. 4 of these have now returned to work, and then the remaining 11, we are now managing that process to see when they can finalize this process of suspension and return the members back to work. Within the military environment, there were a total of 83 personnel or 83 members that were suspended. HR is currently conducting, or in consultation rather, with the legal division to try and manage these members. So we are re-looking at the seriousness of the charges, and then to motivate in the interim for 18 of these members to return back to work. As I indicated in the previous year, we were qualified on leave administration, but we've managed to manage that because the AG's biggest concern was our leave balances that were not adequately managed. So within that environment, what we've done is we have reminded and given instructions to all service and divisional chiefs to ensure that leave is approved and captured on the system and reported through the systems on a monthly basis to the HR Council. Relating to those members who resign, retire, or exits the department, that before anybody exits the department, we capture and manage all the leave days to ensure that the leave entitlement at the end of the financial year is accurately accounted for. Relating to employees doing business with the state. So there were findings that we received from the AG because the Department of Defense didn't have a system. Not just the Department of Defense, but government in general did not have the system to be able to track when an employee of the state does business with other entities. We are now in discussions with DPSA to develop a system where we can also utilize the same system that the AG uses to detect and report on officials doing business with the state. In total, there were 78 officials that had business interests with other state entities, and 10 of these officials did business with the Department of Defense. 23 of these were reserve force members, and they are not prohibited by law because they are not permanent employees. They are on call-up that were doing business with the state. 65 of these officials provided written feedback with proof of either indicating whether if they have resigned as directors of these entities or not. 25 of these officials deregistered their membership with these companies. 5 officials terminated their services within the Department of Defense. It must also be noted that within the civilian environment, there were no SMS members. So there were no directors and above that were doing business with the state, with the Department of Defense, or with other state entities. Within the military environment, there were no generals or full colonels that were doing business with the Department of Defense. A bulk of these members were from lieutenant colonels to corporals, and they were not necessarily involved within the procurement environment of the Department of Defense. However, they came from all services and divisions, but we would like to assure you that none of these members were either in the finance environment or were in the procurement environment where they actually may have gained any other benefits from knowing what's needed to be tendered for or not. That we assure you, and the AG will be able to give you that evidence should there be a need. Relating to performance information, Chair, the AG raised a finding within the Defense Intelligence Program relating to vetting products. So the AG's biggest concern was we could not give them access to employees who may have gone through the vetting process for security clearances and giving them full access to that environment. It must be noted that when a person applies for security clearance, you give your banking details, banking statements, you give personal information, and that was the information that the defense intelligence environment could not provide to the auditors. But the information was also accessible from the CETA environment. But we have had numerous engagements with the Auditor General, and we have now agreed with them. We have reached an agreement with them for the information that comes from the ECAS system, from the CETA environment, for the AG to have full access. That information gives you, once you're able to get the first number of any individual, it gives you full access to the security clearance that the person may have received, but obviously not their personal information. But it tells you, because at the end of last year, the information that we reported was where the AG indicated about 5,111 members received their vetting results, but it was not, they couldn't get full access to it. But now that information is available, where the AG could confirm the status of the person's security clearance, whether if the person received top secret, secret, or confidential. So that is the agreement we've reached with the AG to be able to acquire that information. So based on that, we should not have a recurrence of this finding in the current financial audit that the AG will be completing in 2024. Coming to the tangible capital assets. Findings that were raised by the AG relating to the existence and completeness of assets that could not be verified by the auditors. We do acknowledge that there are challenges within the environment, and we have shared it with the portfolio committee that due to our systems not integrating, these are the challenges that we do face. But we'd like to assure you today that 71% of those assets that the AG could not verify, as at the end of February, we have verified 71% of those assets. We are also hoping that by the 31st of March, which we do acknowledge is just about 9 days from today, we should be able to give at least some 85% assurance that all the assets of the Department of Defense have been fully accounted for. The AG also raised challenges around dummy numbers that were not eliminated from the system. As at the end of February, we have also verified that 45% of these dummy numbers have been eliminated from the system. And that should be able to give us some assurance by the time the AG finalizes their audits on where we are with regard to existence and completeness of assets. The AG raised a finding around the inadequate asset management structure. As you're all aware, the asset environment does not reside within the finance division, but it resides within the logistics environment. We have engaged with National Treasury to give us funding to see if we can have a concept structure where we can increase the numbers of the people within the asset management. Currently, we only have 4. So these 4 employees are reliant on information that comes from services and divisions for them to consolidate into an asset register and into the environment for them to account for these assets. So that is the controls we put into place to try and see how we can best manage this structure within that environment. And that will also, once we are able to manage that, we'll address the assertions of existence and completeness. The AG also raised findings last year relating to the valuation of assets that did not have substantiating evidence. So the service and divisions manage their own assets, and then the director asset management within the logistics environment consolidates these results and records them on the logistics system. So there were adjustments that were made in terms of the law from the 1st of April 2002. All assets that are acquired at a specific value must be recorded at that value and not re-evaluated. So the controls that the logistics environment has put in place, from now going forward, the system has been locked and blocked and limited to what transactions are carried within that environment. All adjustments and valuations must be approved first by the Director Asset Management within the logistics environment in C-log before they are captured on the system. This will address that specific assertion. We've also gone through a process where we want to reverse all those transactions that were captured with valuations for the auditors to be able to audit, so that we're able to deal with that. And then we'll upload this onto the CalMIS system. As at the end of February, 50% of these exceptions have been addressed, and we hope by the time the AG starts full audit on the assets, would have also done a considerable amount of these transactions. Now we move to procurement and contract management, where our challenges have been, where we have incurred those irregularities. So a lot of these findings related to non-compliance with procurement regulations, policies, processes, and procedures within the Department of Defense. So what Director Procurement Management has done, he has engaged with all the service and divisions, because we currently have 78 procurement units across the Department of Defense. And all these entities either reside within the logistics environment or within the Army environment or within some of the services that manage their own procurement. The Director Procurement Management has had engagements with all these procurement forums and all these entities across all provinces, where seminars are held, including Internal Audit Division, to assist these entities in terms of how they interpret legislation and processes and policies around managing of procurement within our environments. We've also realized when it comes to ration patrol packs, we didn't do adequate research and analysis in terms of identifying all the suppliers and manufacturers that manufacture these things. And hence, we had challenges around the acquisition of these ration packs. So we have now instituted controls around the place to be in line with the National Treasury instruction notes on managing these, where we do adequate research in terms of pricing and quality and quantity of these ration packs and any other commodities that we acquire to assist the Defense Force in our deployments. There were also challenges around bids that were not evaluated in accordance with advertised specifications. But as indicated, these are based on lack of understanding and interpretation of regulations. So that's where we are around that. So we have now improved and trying to capacitate the evaluation process, the functionality environments, to ensure that all of us are on the same page. Every entity that is within the procurement environment, that we manage these things. And as I did indicate earlier on, Director Procurement Management is on top of this in conjunction with the compliance environment, for them to ensure that all these entities understand what they are doing with regard to these procurement-related findings. We have, within the different service and divisions, there are also procurement recovery committees that must, in conjunction with different entities, the assurance providers, to manage the pre-audits So there must be pre-audits that must be done within the procurement units of the Department of Defense to manage these procurement challenges that we do have. So by the time contracts are awarded to suppliers, at least processes are followed to ensure that all the different environments know what they're doing. Over the last 2 years, the SecDef has appointed or has established a Governance, Risk and Compliance and Accountability Committee. This oversees the capability and the challenges within all procurement entities within the department. And where there are concerns around the delegations, where people are not managing the procurements properly and there are weaknesses within those environments, these delegations are withdrawn or suspended until there is adequate remedial action that's been taken within these entities. This information that this oversight committee also identifies is also shared with the chiefs of service and divisions, presented to the audit committee, shared with the Auditor General, so that there's some kind of consistency in application and lessons learned from different entities. We'll also just like to tell you, I think 2 years ago and last year, the SecDef finalized a memorandum of agreement with the National School of Governance. And we'd like to tell you that as at this reporting date, we have had training within the CPSC environment where 60 members have been trained to have a better understanding around procurement. At the accounting support base, the ASB KZN, we have trained 31 members within that environment to improve the controls within the procurement environment. At ASB in Mpumalanga, we have trained 36 members. So all in all, we've trained up 127 people so far within the procurement entities for them to ensure. So this collaboration we have with the National School of Governance should assist us in reducing the number of irregular expenditures that we have within these environments and all our procurement entities. Chairperson and members of the Portfolio Committee, that is the end of our presentation on how we are managing the action plans within the Department of Defense. SecDef, I'm not sure if you'd like to say anything.
SecDef?
Thank you, Chair. We will take questions and input. Maybe then at the end, we will then comment. Thank you.
Okay. No, thank you very much for that. Alex, let us look at the report, 2 or 3 questions, and the rest will be incorporated. I think it's reflected in our legacy report for the 7th Parliament to look at. And Mr. Murray, your hand is up.
Thank you, Chair. One question is just for clarity, and then I will pose 1 or 2 others. First one was on the slide number 6, where it is indicated that 10 billion rand relates to underfunding of the compensation of employees, and 5 billion for non-compliance for procurement-related prescripts. If I can recall correctly, it was reported to us in the past that because of the money that of the special defense account that was used for compensation of employees, there was a debt of so-called 12 billion rand. Now, I mean, 2 billion rand might not sound much in the bigger picture, but we can do quite, we can basically do all the midlife upgrades of the 3 frigates with 2 billion rand. So 2 billion rand is actually substantial. And I just need clarity on that, whether that was incorrectly reported in the past, and where does that difference come from? Then the other question I have is on page of slide number 9, with regards to the officials on suspensions, and what was a concern to me, and I need some clarity on that last bullet on the right-hand side, with regards to the military suspension, 83 military suspension, uniform members is quite significant. And we know many of those are senior rank officials in the SANDF. Now it says here, HR is currently consulting with legal And I find that strange that only now there's a consultancy taking place. I mean, we know, for instance, the Deputy Surgeon General was suspended in 2020. And we know that there was an indication last year of his suspension being withdrawn and then immediately being reinstated. So there's a very, very senior person with enormous high cost salary, but he's still suspended. So why only now the consultancy with legal? My information is this consultancy and consultancies have taken place some substantial time ago. Why only now? And how will they then, chase this up and not only wait for people to retire and then, their suspension comes to a natural end? Then the other point that I want to have a question on is on slide 11. It was indicated to those who are doing business with the state and with the department, there's no indication of money being recovered, because obviously in terms of those findings, if I'm correct, you need to try to recover some of that money. On the right-hand side, where it is posted of 35 officials who has resigned as directors. Now, obviously, we know acting CFO and SecDev, that is not the only requirements that they must be directors. They must not have a relationship with those companies doing business. There must now be arm's length relationships. So in other words, family members, close ties with those. And, if you are still a shareholder, but you're not a director, then it implies that you can do business. That is not true. Please clarify that, and how many of those do have some arm's length relationships still with those companies, and how and when will that be terminated and then cost be recovered? Then on slide 13, with regards to those 71% of current assets have been physically verified, it is envisaged that it will be completed by the 31st of March. Are we still on track with 31st of March? Have you completed that in the meantime? Or what is the new deadline with regards to that? And also 45% of dummy numbers. Isn't that a bit low at this stage, since you have been busy with this for quite a while, and seeing that you have 71% of current assets have been physically verified? So why is there no correlation then with that 71%? That's 45% seems to be incredibly low, and I need some clarity on that. Chairperson, thank you very much from my side.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, are there any questions? Okay, it looks as though Mr. Murray covered most questions. Over to you, SecDev.
Thank you, Chair. I will request the acting CFO to respond on the SDA and that 2 billion that the member is referring to, Member Murray, Honorable Murray. Then the suspension that again Honorable Murray is talking about in the military environment, the Chief of Staff will indicate why the consultation is only taking place now. And then we have online the director Mkhwanazi, who's responsible for asset management. She so to answer this so that she can give us a comfort and whether or not we are on track with these matters. Through you, Chair, I'll allow the acting CFO. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just to Honorable Murray, I may not have got your question fully, but I'll try to answer on what I think I had. So just to break down the irregular expenditure, out of the 15 billion, 10 billion related to the underfunding of the compensation of employees. Then in the last financial year, we incurred an additional 2.9 billion, but that was within the, that became an authorized expenditure because we could not utilize the goods and services to fund that shortfall. Then within the procurement environment, if we take all the transactions, it did relate to about 5 billion relating to the non-compliance around the procurement. So if you actually take the non-compliances that we've actually incurred as a department, it's almost approximately 18 billion. So 2.9 billion related to unauthorized expenditure, 10 billion related to irregular expenditure because we utilize funds within the Department of Defense, because we utilize, unfortunately, money within the goods and services and within some of the transactions in the first 2 years within the SDA to fund the shortfall to pay our soldiers that were unfunded for. So that is how the breakdown of that irregularity was. The question that dealt with employees on suspension, Secretary will deal with that, but before Secretary comes in, Chair, we can get Ms. Nkunjana from the HR environment to maybe just assist us with the questions around the employees that were doing business with the state.
Good morning, Chair and members of the Portfolio Committee. So on the question of the employees doing business with state, as the Honorable Member Mare has alluded that we had 65 members, of which 35 deregistered their companies and some has resigned as directors of companies. So the process that HR is doing now together with the Ethics Committee of the department is to analyze, because the process is you give members an opportunity to put their explanations in writing, and then the chairperson of the Ethics Committee together with the members of the Ethics Committee will analyze those responses and then recommend consequences through the head of the department, which will then be effected. So the consequences will be determined by the committee and the recommendations that would have been made by the committee after analyzing their responses. So what we can confirm now, the fact that they've deregistered, we can confirm that they do not have interest currently with those companies, but on the transgression that already happened, so the process is that we are analyzing their responses, we will then make recommendations of the sanctions that must be imposed on those members, whether it's recovery or any other sanction, depending on case by case and the explanation from the officials that were found to have transgressed the public service regulations. Thank you, Chair.
Situtu, could you please assist us with the questions on the assets?
What is the name of this colleague who was on the platform?
Mkwenazi.
What is the level? She's
a Director Asset Management, Chair.
Director Assets Management. Okay.
Yeah, she just unmuted, so she should be able to speak now.
Okay, sure. Thanks.
Good morning, Chairperson and members of the committee. From an asset management perspective, what the Honorable Member Mare was asking about, firstly, the 71%, whether the 100% is still on target. What we have agreed as a management of the department is that the minimum, as acting CFO has indicated, he said the expectation is that we need to do better than what we did last year. So the target is at least a minimum of 85% of asset verification should be achieved by end of March, the end of this financial year. That is the first question. The second question on the dummy numbers of 45% is that there is a concerted effort to make sure that the 45% is improved. So we are expecting an improvement on the elimination of the dummy numbers, because that was one of the contributing factors towards, obviously, the qualification in terms of verification for completeness and existence of the assets. So there is a concerted effort, and if we achieve the target on dummy numbers, we anticipate that it will, by the end of this financial year, when we're submitting the financial statements, it will definitely be more than 50%, perhaps around the 60% target on elimination of dummy numbers. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Chair. I'll allow the Chief of Staff on military members who are on suspension.
COS.
Chairperson, thank you very much, and greetings to honorable members. I need to say that with the military personnel that are on suspension, there is something that we do routinely in the military. And that is when we're looking at, we start off at the time when we're looking at their promotions. So we take stock of all that rank, for instance, in the senior level from at the rank of colonels, brigadier generals, and going up. We always take stock in terms of those cases and where they are and what is happening of that. And in us doing that exercise, there's always legal by our side to always try and advise us on their suspension. There was then a decision that was taken later to say that we have got people who are suspended and therefore then they need to be recalled back. One of the things that we considered, I think there is a very senior member that we all know about him and his suspension. And we did take stock on that, and we specifically called legal in this environment to say that what do we do with this member? The member needs to be called back, and we were cautioned by legal with the explanations that were given at the time to say that no, please don't call the member back. And so it is from that point that the member has not as yet been called back. But again, to emphasize the fact that the rest of the members, currently HR is busy with an exercise of assessing them, and that assessment is assessing everybody who's on suspension to check the seriousness of these cases, and it is not the last assessment. Those that are left out to say they must not be called back, they're still going to be looked at as we move into the future, because things changes. They've been charged, there's court cases, and everything is there. So we will continue to do an assessment of them. And I need to say that is where we are. But about the senior member, we were advised to say that, no, we shouldn't. So that is where we are. There were explanations that were given as to why we should not. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you very much. Right, Secretary, are you done?
Chair, and unless there are other questions, then we are done. And we keep on tracking the implementation so that we improve in that space. Thank you.
Okay, I know Tabo's hand is up, but let me just check if Mare is covered. Mare, have all your questions been answered?
No, sir, unfortunately not. The question that has not been answered or responded to, I have heard about the officials that has resigned as directors. We have seen that. My question was specifically whether there's a requirement in terms of that arm's length relationship. So in other words, it seems like they are allowed to stay on as shareholders of the company, or family members can stay on, and we know that that is not allowed. Now, it seems like there's nothing happening in that regard, and they haven't also responded to that specific one, because it's 35 officials. That's significant number that has only resigned as directors. And we know that a directorship as per se do not identify or describe your arm's length relationship and financial benefits that can derive from that. So that should be addressed, and it seems like it has not been addressed. So I'd like to get a response to that. Thank you. Much appreciated.
Thank you very much. All right, they will come back on that one. Thabo, it's your opportunity.
So, thank you very much, Chair, and good morning to all of you on the platform. Chair, in addition to the follow-up of Honorable Murray, we need to understand what the department has done over and above what they have reported to say X number of employees have resigned from the directorship of companies. The X number has decided to resign from the state to continue with their business, so forth and so on. Over and above that, because we know that when you do business with the state, you need to declare. Some sort of investigation must be conducted to establish whether they were declaring or they were dishonest on both fronts. They were dishonest in doing business with the state. They were also dishonest with the department insofar as their declaration in the department is concerned, and their declaration with the entities of government that they were doing business with. It would be understood when family members are doing business, having declared that a certain member of their family, for an example, works in the defense department or any other department, it's expected for them to declare. They are not prohibited to do business, but they must declare if their family members are working for the state, or if they themselves have been in the employ of the state. Those provisions are there. But we need to understand whether those investigations were done and what are the consequences, consequential management employed to deal with that particular trends of violations of the prescripts of the law as outlined. Secondly, on irregularities within the department, I've heard that both in their response in the or in the presentation indicating that they have trained official in the sector as a result of trying to improve or reduce the irregularities that are happening. Can they indicate to us, out of all the procurement centers that where do they, if you were to do it graphically, would you say that you see a decline in terms of these irregularities out of several action plans that you have undertaken to deal with this matter? Because it's a recurring matter, it's not a new matter insofar as the AG's audit outcomes are concerned. Now, if you were to look at all your procurement center, would you identify those that are doing well with less irregularities or none irregularities? Because what I don't understand, Chair, is that a training will not necessarily deal with address the issue of irregularities. First of all, you need to employ people who are qualified to be in that environment. Over a period of time, they gain experience. They should not commit the same mistake over and over again. But we have seen with the Defence Force that it looks like it's business as usual. There's irregularities identified this year. You'll have more irregularities in the next financial year, so forth and so on. So how does this training really guarantee? I don't see it guaranteeing that there will be no irregularities. As long as there is no change of attitude, they can highlight that out of the procurement center, which centers are doing well in terms of ensuring that they minimize their irregularities if they are there, they are at minimal. But in the main, they perform their responsibilities in that environment according to the book. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Thabo. For that, colleagues, I think we are done with the question. And okay, let me, sorry, with our colleagues have asked questions. Let me ask the department to respond, starting with the follow-up on Mr. Mares, and then go to Thabo's.
Thank you, Chair. The question that was not answered on arm's length and not at arm's length, that I think started even before the actual legislation. Every end of the financial year, members, as SMS members, are required, it's a separate process, are required to declare whether there was at arm's length or not at arm's length. At arm's length is when your relatives were involved in doing business with the state. The not at arm's length is when you are declaring that, as far as you know, no relative of yours did this. So it's a separate process. But having said that, we also have what we call an SBD4, which becomes part of a procurement. And that SBD4 indicates whether it's a declaration, whether as a member sitting there, if in these boards, evaluation or whatever, are you in any way related to the people who have made submission for contracts, so that you can do. The problem as a human factor is that sometimes people can lie. So you need some kind of verification whether or not the declaration is authentic and legitimate. But there are those that we after you have sometimes found that there was an irregularity, when you go back, you find that there was no honesty when this form was signed. But we have an SBD4 that is part of a control. And again, we involve in bigger contracts, internal audits to audit before the award of a tender or a contract. And there has been circumstances where they have recommended that it be sent back and that it is it's re-advertised because it's not the process has not been followed to the latter. That, Chair, and then when it comes to the ones that are doing business with the state, we had already indicated that there is an ethics committee, and within the ethics committee, then you will have a small group that investigates each case, and then they will then, after investigation, they will then make recommendations either to the SecDef or to the chief about what consequence need to be applied. This process is still these investigations are still in process, Chair. What question? What was another question? I think I have covered those. Oh, then Honorable Muntle is raising questions about training, whether the training will help. Now, if this was purely, the irregularity was purely because people don't understand, are not interpreting the legislation, are not interpreting policies correctly, it will help, unless if there is a human factor of corruption. But if you are saying some of these people, officers who deal with this, it's because sometimes it's just a wrong interpretation of the prescripts, then we think, yes, it will help. And it's not only just the School of Government. We also have indicated, we have on what we call on-the-job training, where we go to the centers, the CLOG, as well as the environment that is called governance risk and compliance. They go to the centers, they visit, and they orientate people, and they assist, especially officer commandings who come in as new, and then they need to be then orientated. And we also have had a situation where irregular expenditure is not because there was some wrongdoing. A unit will go on and procure, but they don't, the person signing has not, the second in command does not have a delegation, but the commander or the OC is not available. Maybe it's not available for a week or is out or something. So we have now said, okay, in order to make sure that there is functionality and continuity, we are going to give a delegation to 2. You will give it to the officer commanding, who must be there and sign all the time. But in the event that they need to procure so that the work continues, but the officer commanding is not available, then you have the second in command who is duly authorized to then procure. And in that event, we hope that that will reduce the irregular expenditure. But in terms of the units, which ones are problematic and which ones are not, I'll leave it to CILOG. Maybe they have that information. I do know that we did have a problem in Durban, and that we withdrew the delegation. We sent people to go and train. And I have been informed that now they have done all the remedial, and we have issued again a delegation. So as we go on and do spot checks, sometimes that's when you realize that there is a problem. And we indicated that before I issue, or the accounting officer issues a delegation now, you must go there and check whether that unit complies, the structure complies, there will be proper segregation of duties and the amounts. Then obviously the amounts will then be determined by the size of the unit. So we have the controls that we've put in place. Maybe it's early days to say, is the training working or not? Because we started with the School of Government, I think, in the last financial year, 2023. So it will be early days to say it works or not. But from our side, we hope that the training is going to help. Thank you. I'm not sure whether the CILOG environment would like to add.
Maybe when the CILOG adds, I wish to invite him to deal with this as well.
Yes.
Last time, Secretary, there was a process. Remember, you were also qualified because the AG said they could not vouch for the completeness of the disclosure.
Yes,
of the disclosures of irregular expenditure. Okay, and so, and the process, and the CFO then underwent a process to try and go back, look at all the populations from when the samples revealed that there was incomplete disclosure. They then came back with new disclosures amounting to over 500 million rand back then. And that process was still ongoing. And since he left, we have not heard anything of it. And it's possible that after he left, that process was canned, and there was no longer any follow-up on the disclosure of further disclosure of irregular expenditure, and that was it. So where is that process at now? before the COS come in to add.
Chair, in overall, the internal audit environment has audited 17 in total. They have identified just a little over 700 million, which is part of the additional, or which is part of the irregular expenditure linked to procurement of 5 billion. So we have accounted for that. It's part of the overall irregular expenditure that we have disclosed. They will continue in their audit plan for the 2024-2025 financial year. It's a bit slow, but we are identifying those and we are recording them.
Okay. All right. And we keep the AG's office updated on the new disclosures.
Yes, we do, Chair. The AG engages with ourselves and the internal audit environment. So whatever we have received from the internal audit environment, we do sit, actually before any disclosures are made to the financial statements, we do sit with the Auditor General to confirm the accuracy of those figures before we actually finalize the audit. So we do engage them.
And then the second issue, you are going to digitize the procurement procedures. I don't know. I'm using that for a lack of a better word. Things were manual, and that if you needed any information that the AG required or the internal audit you required, you would not get it unless you go right down to that procurement unit, you know, and so you could not get it at the press of a button. And so the process was going to be developed where it would make it possible for you sitting where you are at the head office to get any information from wherever you needed, and just at a press of the button without having to send anybody to a procurement center. How far is that process? Or you're still, or the team is still resisting digitization or making the process electronic, moving away from manual?
Good morning, Chair. If I may, I'm Major General Strubel from the Log Division.
Yes.
Yeah, as you rightfully said, sir, we are still in process with that. It's early stages. Our people are looking at digitizing and in various environments. At this stage, we're going to give our first presentation within the new financial year to our principals first, before we start with anything, because we need to go ahead from SECTIV and from the Chief SANDF. But we have been investigating numerous avenues. It's looking good at this stage, and we should have an answer by the end of May. We should have an answer which direction we're taking with it.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, it's fine. It's fine with that. COS, you were to deal with the question Honorable Thabo raised on whether you are seeing any improvement from the last time we had from those procurement centers.
Chairperson, thank you very much. I would want to put it differently, with your permission, Chair, by saying that the last time when we were dealing with issues around consequence management, we did indicate the fact that we have taken consequences on those procurement units that have not been performing very well. And at that time, it was 19 of them. Now, right now, where we are, the one that was highly problematic has now been resolved. And that is the one that is in Durban. That is the one that was most problematic. It has been resolved. So they've been given the go-ahead now. And they've been given a go-ahead by the team in the DOD that is always tasked to do this assessment. And it is that team that comes back and inform us to say, that and that unit, there is red flags. And when after their presentation, then we make a decision that we draw the delegation. And when we withdraw the delegation, Chairperson, important is to note the fact that it places a burden in other areas, given the fact that that unit must still survive. And so we always want to provide alternative in that. And I've heard Honorable Mutla very well. He was also interested to say which of our procurement units are doing well. The answer to this question is for us to say that those that are being indicated as red flagged units, we have removed the delegation. But I think it is important from what Honorable Mutla is saying, because I think it will also be a motivational factor for us to begin to say, go and benchmark with that procurement unit, because that procurement unit is rated #1 and it is the procurement unit that's doing well. And we can even say that procurement unit, maybe give it some additional task if need be, to say, but have a 2-day work session, coach your colleagues on how are you getting things done the right way. I think we take note of that, Chairperson. That's all I would wish to say. Thank you so much.
No, thank you very much. Sector and the Chief of Staff, you are complementing each other very well. Please, if we had started on this note, we would be far.
Chair, can I?
Yes, Chabo.
Yeah, so sorry, I don't want to us to delay or belabor the deliberation on this point. But if you recall, Chair, they came and made a presentation on the reforms that they want to. I don't recall if that was also part of the action plan. The reform they wanted to implement in the log division. A model was presented to us of a procurement center of some sort being established, which included part of what they've presented, going across the country, training this procurement center, so forth and so on. And the former C-Log, may his soul rest in peace, he used to complain that we expect as the committee for him to account for everything in the procurement, whilst in actual fact, the delegations that he reside under his responsibility was 5 million. Anything above that goes to SecDef as what they call a board, which is under SecDef. Now, a proposal was also made to say, no, let's give them, increase the delegation in the 2 centers or whatever centers that they have. I hear that now they are saying, well, you are not doing well, we are taking away those delegations. But that does not happen to the 2 centers. It happens at the lower level where, Chair, on several occasions when we visited, they are frustrated because they cannot do anything. As if that is not enough, those delegations are taken away from them. We are not saying that they must be given more delegation whilst they are not in compliance. They need to be able to comply and ensure that they do things by the book so that they get more delegation. If you will recall, Chair, that was a challenge when we went to 2 mil, I think 2 mil in Cape Town. When we went to Bloemfontein, that was also a challenge, the issue of delegation. Hence my question wanted to find out which of the procurement centers is rated #1, is doing well, so that they can indeed benchmark, but more responsibilities or delegation can be given to that center, because it shall also assist in terms of the efficiency of the procurement challenges that the Defence Force is encountering. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. SecDef, that this is for you, just to when you wind up your discussion on the matter.
Chair, there was a discussion, and I know that at some point we did indicate that we need more logisticians, because at the time when there were changes, then we lost more logisticians. One is that we consider making e-procurement a mastering, so that as soldiers come up and officers come up, this is a mastering to them. But when it comes to which one is doing well, I can say that the Air Force Center is doing well. I haven't heard from my side anything bad from them, in such a way that I have increased the delegation so that they can procure jet fuel, because it's quite expensive. So, and I did that on the basis that they are clean. They might not be clean in the near future, but they've been doing well. Same applies to the Army one. I think it's the Army. It's the Army 7 maintenance, 17 maintenance. It's also doing well. It has just one or two things, but all in all, these two are the ones that I can say they are doing well. The issue that General Ramanswane indicated, though, is that as you withdraw the delegation, you are burdening another one that now has to procure on behalf of this other one. So if we look at these that are doing well, and we are starting to say we'll give them more work, it might also burden them. We rather make sure that there is compliance in different regions, rather than to burden those who are doing well. Thank you, Chair. And I'm sure General will agree with that. Thank you.
Okay, now let's leave it at that for now. And because the chair of the audit committee is going to make a comment when he does his presentation, he was listening carefully on the reported progress you are making. Maybe this should be the opportunity to welcome, whilst I thank you for your presentation, SecDef and COS. Let me welcome the chair of the audit committee, Mr. Luyanda Mangugu, and to do his presentation. Over to you, sir.
Good morning, Honorable Chair and honorable members. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I am going to switch on my camera and then switch it off just to get a remembrance. This is me there. I hope I'm visible. I'm using a different gadget for my audio.
No, we don't see you.
You don't see me. Let me try and use the gadget I'm speaking from. Just 1 second, so you'll see me just now. I've switched on the camera. I'm using a different gadget for audio and a different gadget for the presentation. That's me there. I'll switch it off. Greetings to Chair and honorable members. I'm not by myself. I have a company of the members who serve with myself in the audit committee, Chair. Just maybe to introduce them, I've got member Shala Harry. She's in the call. I've got Babu Ndlangisa, he's also in the call. I've got Advocate Block, who's also in the call. I also have Chaplain General Jamangile, who's a retired chaplain, but he's a general who's in the committee as well. And they're all in the call. Thank you so much, Chair.
You are all welcome. You may go ahead.
Thank you so much, Chair. If I can be given rights to share, then I'll pull up my presentation. I'm hoping it's visible, Chair. You'll confirm for me.
Not yet. Okay, there you are. There you are. Presentation mode.
Right. It will pop up just now. Wonderful.
Right. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you so much, Chair. I'm gonna let me just appreciate first the opportunity for us to be here. We were last here as audit committee, I think, in 2022, and it is always a pleasure to come and share our experiences and to give an update on the audit action plan as we've been updated by the department, and various observations, Chair, which we've made as we engage the department. Basically, maybe on this cover screen, we engage at different times of the year, and even though the latest was our third quarter meeting, which only happened in February, but the formal issued report, I'm going to make reference because most of the items will still be very relevant, is our half-year report, which I must mention, this has been issued to Acting SecDef, to the Chief of Defense, and also to the Ministry as well. So this is the official report that we did an assessment halfway through the year to make observations. I'll touch briefly on just 3 aspects, and at the end you'll see there's a slight modification perhaps to the presentation that I shared yesterday, but it's just very few cosmetic changes, which is in the main that last italics at the bottom, just to highlight some issues which I think are very important as well. If I go through the introduction through you, Chair, we always cover this part because it gives the audience the ability to establish that we are a committee that's constituted based on legislation, but I'm not going to dwell too much of it. But just to say from the PFMA, it has, through various sections 76 and 77, given birth to this committee. And we do also make references to Section 38 as well. But what we are, Chair, is we establish as an oversight assurance body, which provides independent oversight over governance, risk management, control processes of the department. And I will touch very much later on, just expanding on that internal control processes of the department, what we mean by that. In terms of our terms of reference, we have a duty to review the effectiveness of internal control systems within the department, the effectiveness of the internal audit function, their risk management processes and systems, to determine or have a look at the accounting and audit concerns that are identified by internal audit and external auditors, and also to have a view on any significant investigations and whether management is making the appropriate responses and implementing the recommendations there. As a start, Chair, what we have observed in the department is that I think it's common knowledge now that the role of the CFO remains vacant. It does worry us, and we thought let's bring it up. You've mentioned earlier also the one of Secretary for Defense, that also worries us. Maybe in that same basket, I will add also that the head of audit, the chief audit executive, also remains vacant. So those 3 key positions are just the ones that we would highlight. But if I come maybe to the presentation, the issue of funding, Chair, it does concern us a lot. You'll see it's actually the common thread that goes right through, and it's got let me call it devastating consequences, and we'll touch on various aspects as to how this translates to the issues that we're raising. To date, or as a half year at the very least, the department had registered 2.6 billion rands in unauthorized, and this time around it had actually been elevated beyond just irregular to unauthorized, because they literally don't have that as an appropriation. And this is a matter that we absolutely would highlight as much as possible to say there is a problem, there is a challenge. And so whilst we stabilizing administration, good governance, this is one area that cannot be ignored, because it also has a direct feed as to whether the department is able to do what it's mandated to do. So it worries us a great deal. By end of this year, Chair, we estimate that this unauthorized will top 5.6 billion. If I go to irregular expenditure, the charge or the demand by law is that management must prevent irregular, fruitless, and wasteful. It's not just to investigate, but we must prevent it. So as this committee, Chair, I want to report that management has failed to prevent irregular expenditure. We continue having some that is being incurred, and I think the committee has raised issues in that respect as well. But we want to say we are unsatisfied that the department has been unable to prevent, to clear irregular expenditure and fruitless and wasteful. And this investigation process is in our contextualization have not yielded the desired result. They take too long, they delay, and they almost can be regarded as failed the process, the requirements, the regulations that come with irregular and fruitless and wasteful. And as a result, what it does, it renders the consequence management of the department to be almost ineffective. There's a big amount of work to be done to unblock, to make sure that our board of inquiries and all processes within the department are as efficient as possible. Let me, if I just do a bit of an analysis, there's about 53.7 million, which is new just in the current year, 23-24. Some big chunk of that also is regarded as unallocated, which means the department is wanting to establish who exactly is responsible for this. That adds on to the delays in actually clearing that and investigating it. Also, the CFO did report the 15.9 billion rands by end of September, which was the total balance of irregular, of which 10 relates to COE, then the rest in the log division. And if you see that last line there, that of these huge sums of balances that we're talking about, at that point in time, only 76,000 rands was cleared at that time. So it just shows how delaying the process is in just getting rid. You'll see on my next slide, if I compare that seamless 76,000 on the fruitless side, the department at that time had only cleared 800 rands. I know sometimes someone might think this is a typo, but that's what it is. A mere 800 rands was cleared out of a total of 438 million rands. And on that slide, maybe what's important to highlight is that of the 438 million rands classified as fruitless and wasteful, there's 431 which may not even be collectible because it's prescribed, because the processes have taken too long, and therefore people may have escaped without having been able to pay back the money or even be held accountable. So it worries us a great deal. Of course, maybe I must mention that in what has been incurred in the current year, there's 1 million rands which came from the Air Force side of things. And that also just means there's a bit of focus and improvement that's required there to prevent once again. But if incurred, we must be able to unleash processes with efficiency. If I go to the action plan, Chair, my summary maybe is to say the action plan soon when AG completes the audit, we expect by around about September, October, latest November of the year, the department to have put means together to be able to table a credible action plan. But what we've seen in the department is that as at half year, which ends September, there was no action plan. When we met in September, literally almost a month ago, there was no action plan that was acceptable. SecDef did refer to it, that something was made available by management. So actions have been happening behind the scenes, but SecDef was not happy with the quality, and therefore it was referred back, which we appreciate because it means processes within are effective in determining whether it's really addressing root causes. However, we were unhappy because it simply means the department formally does not have what we could regard as an action plan that is signed off, that is committing everyone to say we shall implement these by these dates. And if we fail to, we may even be subject to being called to order. And that's one point I wanted to emphasize. So we've taken note of the presentation from the CFO, and I'm hoping that when we convene for our Q4, which although may be slightly late, but we should be able to track and confirm the progress that is reported. But as a committee, we have not had a signed off adopted action plan. So therefore, Chair, I'm unable to give you any further validation of what was reported or the extent to which that even has been reviewed by our internal auditors. And this counts on both sides. There's one side to it, which is the AG findings, which are more public, and they end up in the audit report, which stands qualified for now. But the other side to it is the internal audit findings, which always insist that the department must not ignore the internal audit findings. We must make sure that we carry them along, because once we address those, it becomes almost like a precursor in preparing the ground for us to be able to come clean when the AG comes. But Chair, even before internal audit comes, we've got a risk management function, risk management system, which we're also calling upon management to take seriously, because once we identify risks, we must mitigate them so that when audit comes, internal audit, in fact, comes to do their work, we already, as management, will have taken sufficient steps to be able to address the risks which have been identified. If I come back quickly, Chair, to this slide, I'm not going to spend too much time. CFO has already spoken about it, that we have 3 qualification areas. That special defense area, even though it looks insignificant, I think it continues to be one area that always leads our qualification paragraphs. I think discussions and engagements with the AG continue, and we do hope that we'll soon be able to find each other. We appreciate the progress that has been given, but also as the audit committee, we continue to find means and ways within which we can actually be able to allow the AG sufficient access within the restricted inherent limitations, so that this qualification doesn't become a standing item. On irregular expenditure, it's already been spoken about. Our internal auditors did go there, and some work, some improvement has been noted. However, we still remain concerned, Chair. I think the areas that were lifted in this meeting earlier on, we also share those concerns. And you'll see on my other slide, the issues of skilling, the issues of making sure that we dealing with the professional SM practitioners, even though they may be uniformed, remains relevant. The issues of tools of trade for our procurement units remains relevant as well. And just overall understanding and full compliance, even ethics, vetting, declarations of those members who handle the procurement matters is something that we continue to push for, so that we can be able to stem the tide and prevent as our target irregular expenditure. The issue of movable tangible capital assets, or let me say, commonly known as our assets register, it does concern us quite a bit, I must mention, because in our books, Chair, this is recorded at about between 60 and 64 billion rands. So it is a huge balance. Actually, I got 66 billion rands. That's what it was last time. It's a huge balance. So we're comforted to hear in this meeting about the progress that has been made, that roughly 70% of it has been dealt with now. And we do continue to monitor it, and hoping management will certainly get to 100% before the audit commences, because it's been a long-standing item. And if we can account fully in terms of accurate recording, the values, the location of those assets, it becomes a matter of material concern. On the emphasis of matter, the issue of contingent liabilities, it is a massive risk and high exposure to the department, and we always keep an eye, and I think we're engaging there comfortably. So now you'll see on the last paragraph with legal. Last time we reported this committee is that we're having difficulty getting legal to come and account to the audit committee. They've come to the party, we're engaging, and I think means are well underway to be able to establish ways to shield and defend the department and take necessary measures to make sure that all matters that could expose us to litigation risk are being managed. The rest, Chair, I'm going to move quickly to my next slide. On human resources, we've observed that there is a high level of OHS-related matters that have concern, and I think a lot of these have been covered as well, even in the legacy report. But this, in the main, will revolve around the state of our infrastructure, where our members reside, and various issues, which leads to my next bullet point, that in the 6 months, we had lost 95 of the officials in the department, members, and that's a number to track, I think, to investigate, and the department will certainly be seized with that, so to be able to see whether there's any occupational hazards that resulted perhaps in that, or what exactly is behind that, so that we can be able to make sure that we put in preventative measures to prevent any that is not natural. In terms of grievances, it's a high number, but we're dealing with the high number of personnel. But relatively speaking, it is something that we're looking at sharply, to say the department at that point in time had 931 grievances. And the concerning part is that a huge number, 893 of the 931, were standing beyond the prescribed 90 days. In other words, the department has also given itself a tasking as per regulations that we must resolve these within 90 days. And these go way beyond that. And it is a concern to us because we want to make sure that our members, in terms of the state of their morale, is always at the best possible levels. So we do not want to see grievances that stay longer than necessary. Also on incapacity leave, there are some applications which have been pending since 2021, and that concerns us because ultimately it does feed into maybe the inability to perform and deliver, but also it would talk to morale. This is the paragraph on the legal side, which I've spoken to earlier, that now legal has joined us again in the audit committees, and we're engaging with them to understand the measures, the mechanisms they're engaging on to be able to make sure that the department mitigates the litigation risk that it faces. But we're talking big numbers, so it is an area that concerns us. And in the main, one area that sticks out there, besides the civil claims, which is a huge exposure to the department. And I know many times in the security cluster would say civil claims compared to the actual settlements are miles apart. So even though you see 6.5 billion rands being summons that are put before us, but in terms of when we defend the matters and what ultimately may be a cash payout is far lower than that. But to us, it is a risk exposure. It points to some areas where perhaps there may be non-compliances in how we conduct ourselves, in how we conduct our business. So it is a risk indicator that we want to be given due attention. Also, the issue of the environmental rehabilitation. I think that spillage that has been well documented, it's something that needs to be resolved. It's been with us for a while, and we're monitoring it to make sure that the department does address that. And currently, the exposure coming from that is about 1.4 billion rands. When you come to ICT, it is there's a number of issues perhaps that we can engage in here, but the ones that maybe want to bring forward for now, Chair, is that the department has got an old ICT strategy. The current one that they are working on is dated 2013, and with the specialist ICT personnel, even within our audit committee, will tell you that ICT almost evolves every 3 months, perhaps. Within a year, a lot has happened. So to be sitting with a strategy that goes back over a decade, it is a risk on its own. And that opens us to a lot of vulnerabilities. And it talks to even the issue of digitization within the department, that we don't have a digital strategy. It also talks to the issue of prevalence of our legacy ICT systems, that we have not modernized enough. We're probably one of the most manual departments that I've come across in the public space. And because of who we are dealing with national security issues, it is a matter that concerns this committee, and we want to lift that and elevate it as a concern. Also, there's lack of integration in the systems that the department is using. They don't talk to each other, and it becomes a big frustration for finance. For example, when they have to talk to, let's say, HR or payroll systems or leave management. So these systems are really are something that hampers a lot of progress and efficiencies that we should be seeing. Also on the procurement side, I mean, there's a lack of a single logistics management information systems, which really hampers and makes difficult the management and efficiencies that we should be seeing in the procurement space. And as I said, most of these functions within the department are manual, and this has been with us for a long time. And I think we're also calling upon the committee to assist us in actually bringing interventions so that the necessary funds, once again, as I referred to much earlier, are made available so that we can be able to get the systems ready. And even within the department, that the funds that we have, they must be used responsibly so that we can be able to complete the projects that at least have currently got funds. So it's a double-edged sword, as it were. On the risk management side, just to elevate, Chair, that even though we are the audit committee, there is a responsibility that directly puts risk management systems within our purview. I was involved in the interviews of our independent risk management chairperson, but unfortunately, it's been a year down the line, and we yet to have the chairperson engaged to commence with their duties. We've been following this up, and I think it's at the very last stages. So we should be seeing this before year end, we're hoping concluded. But in the main, Chair, what I must say is that the DOD as a department is a very high risk profile department, and there's a lot of risks, some of which, of course, because we're dealing with security matters, would be classified, but it is a high-risk environment, and unfortunately, most of the risks that the department has identified remain unmitigated. They're flashing red, and a part of it refers to the funding that we need as a department, and a part of it talks to us as the department, having to do what we pay to do with efficiency, holding each other accountable, and being able to deliver on services. So this is just what we wanted to highlight as well. When it comes to monitoring and evaluation, the department as a media chair had accomplished 41%. Of course, we do expect 50% by that media point. So it was slightly behind the curve, but on the spending, it was slightly ahead. And I think with the austerities we're seeing at a national level, which also affecting this department, that's why you see performance not being matched to spending. Also, when it comes to cost containment, we're very much aware that the department has actually embarked already, even implemented some cost containment activities, but we're looking for a formal adoption of these cost containment measures. So they are signed off, and therefore they have the ability to be more enforceable because persons have received the necessary communique that comes from the highest office. So that's that outstanding element. But otherwise, the department has already tried to establish mechanisms to rearrange its activities to make sure that they respond to the austerities. Some of the areas that we've seen that need attention, Chair, is an issue within SAM's space, where inflated prices have been paid for ambulance services, resulting in irregular expenditure amounting to 17 million rands. AJ has reported on this. Also, the medical costs in the department, because it does not have the capacity to retain, let alone hiring, the specialists we need to be able to deliver SAM's specialized services. We lose a lot of people. We can't hire those that we need, and many actually are poached by other institutions, private sector as we know it. So the department has to outsource a lot of its services, and this really is a huge cost. This also does feed to what I said I'll be speaking about it, the issue of properly funding the department. And if we continue to cut COE when there's boots on the ground, but we don't provide for them to be paid salaries, this is what it results to, that even core services such as SAMS will simply not have the required skills to be able to offer their services. Chair, there's been an allocation made for border safeguarding. This was 225 million, 2025 has already been made available. But for the year ahead of us, 500 million rands is been allocated, and for the out year, 200 million. And as an audit committee, we'll be monitoring to make sure that the department spends this for intended purposes, and that really the security on our borders is put at a level where it's expected to be at. As I mentioned earlier, these critical vacancies, Chair, I've already spoken to them, and we're monitoring and we're engaging. We've elevated this to the minister as well. And I think the department is in different stages. Some of them are in motion, and we'll be able to engage, for example, especially the CAE. I think there's been talks with DPME on the grading or the level of where the CAE must be pitched, but we're in agreement with the SecDef that let's use what's currently available, which is pitching this at Chief Directorate. And so we're looking forward to having the recruitment processes started. The CFO one, I think something is happening there as well, and we'll be monitoring progress, and the ministry should be able to give us more in terms of the accounting officer, the SecDef role. In the procurement space, Chair, it has been raised many times that it's almost like outside of what the usual, where procurement is resident outside finance. However, that's where we find ourselves. And as an audit committee, we've said, if because of the peculiarity of the department, to ensure that we don't hamper service delivery and the people really understand the service and divisions demands are the ones who procure, the least then we can do is that we properly skill and to keep the persons who do the procurement. And that's where the problem has been. So even though we've left it within service and divisions, we have not properly upskilled our colleagues in that space. And that's why progress interventions training is happening, and we're really looking forward. I think, as it was asked, it should yield results. It must yield results because we appreciate the interventions, but the test is, are we able to prevent irregular, fruitless, and wasteful once these interventions have been introduced? So we'll be monitoring that space. But I think as it stands, Chair, we still don't have the confidence that the department is at a state where it's able to prevent irregular fully, or even to be able to follow through in terms of investigation, holding those accountable. Those processes need still to be revisited and recapacitated to make sure that they actually do what the regulations require. Also, in terms of service providers, there's service providers, Chair, that on a regular basis the department deals with, and we're making it a call and we're looking for evidence that we measure their performance, because some, they come and don't deliver, and it takes way too long for the department to hold them to account, because their regular assessments, even though payments go through, we don't have evidence of. So the performance evaluation of service providers becomes a matter that needs to be done on a regular basis, and we're looking for that for the department. The issue of the asset management, I think I've sort of touched, but this is talking more on the software side, which I also have spoken to, and basically the inability or the unavailability of an asset management software capability. It really renders that completeness and the asset register with integrity that can be relied upon to be produced and maintained. So these are some of the ICT challenges that the department is also facing. As we mentioned, Chair, a significant number of procurement happens within the LOC division. And when you look at the SM findings that have been raised, unfortunately at that time, only 26%, 26.5% of them related to, okay, let me reword this. Out of the department at that time, I think at about 79 procurement units, 21 of them had the mandates lost, taken away. So only 21 of the 79, if I say it properly, 21 of the 79 no longer had the mandate to procure, and this really leaves the rest of them to be able to procure. So there's been moves by the department to really take away the mandate if the procurement centers or procurement units are not stacking up to what's required, and I think we appreciate that move. But of course, it does have an impact on service delivery. So there's pressure to say those that have been demandated, we need to put the interventions so they can continue to do their work. But unless they're fully compliant, unfortunately, we can't be irresponsible to allow them to procure. And this is something that I think is being monitored closely so that we can be able to get it done properly. All right. I'm just looking at that. Okay, just maybe to make sure that there's no, I state my figures properly there. By December, in fact, the procurement units that were demandated was sitting at 37%, and that 26.5% you see on the screen was an updated figure as of February. So you can see that some had actually been given back, and there's an improvement there that we can report. The issue of deviations, it does concern us. We've seen a huge number of deviations in the department, and we've sent caution to say it should not be regarded as the normal procurement process. It's only to be invoked as an exception. So we are concerned that the department tends to have a high number of deviations. And I think management has taken note of this, and we would like to believe that we should see an improvement going forward. But it does open the department to the exposure of having irregular expenditure, because there's very strict conditions under which we can deviate. And it's not just any reason that could make sense to a department, but it's regulated. It must be those strict conditions. For example, the issue of emergency. It must be an emergency because there's no ways we could have planned or foreseen it. And we do find cases where, even though we know some events, but we still invoke the emergency clauses, which would not fly and therefore would make it to be irregular. So it's a high risk area, and we're looking forward to the department clamping down on this and making sure that it is only used as an exception rather than a norm. If I go to the IG space, Chair, of course, our engagement with the IG actually in an in-committee environment, and they are not in the open forum for sensitivity reasons. Most of their work is classified, so we do afford them that opportunity to brief us in committee. So some of the areas that they've discussed, I'm sure they do get brought in the Joint Standing Committee on Defense in that closed forum. And so some of them would also be able to bring forward, for example, in that forum. But for the purposes of what's available publicly, we can share what is on the screen and some few slides you'll see coming forward. That the area responsible for preventing fraud and corruption, which is DACAF, that directorate responsible for anti-fraud and anti-corruption. That's what that acronym stands for. We have had some concerns with them because on an annual basis, they must undertake a fraud risk assessment. It had not been conducted for the year under review. Also, they must be able to generate a fraud risk register with mitigation measures. Those issues still were pending. Also, they must be able to develop a fraud prevention plan so that it can be implemented to send a strong message that as our policy stands, which has a zero tolerance to fraud, that it is really being implemented as such. So we are concerned that they are lagging behind in terms of executing those plans, and hence it doesn't bode well for stemming a culture of anti-fraud, and we're calling upon them to be able to catch up and executing that. In terms of just the breakdown of the cases that we have, those within the Directorate of Anti-Corruption and Anti-Fraud, DACAF, the total you'll see there is sitting at 123, but the emphasis, Chair, here is that if you look between 2022, 23, and the years before there, I apologize for, okay, let me state this. There's pre-21, 22 cases, so older than 21, 22, and there's those that are dated 21, 22, and 22, 23. The focus is on those three columns to just show the extent of aged cases, which we need to catch up on, because for the current year, it's that slide, it's that column where you have, for example, for DACAF, 7 are in the current year, but the rest of the 123, which is inclusive of the 7, are older cases, and a huge majority of them sit in pre-21, 22. Even if you come to military police, they've got total 361 cases, but only 21 are in the current year. The rest are in the years before, but even older, the 89, which is sitting in the pre-21, 22 column. Also, our legal division, which is part of the value chain in the investigation process, there's a huge amount. I think the emphasis on this table is just to say, out of the total of 594 cases that are in the anti-corruption, anti-fraud space under military police and legal division, only 10% roughly are in the 23, 24. And this is a call for us to expedite our investigation processes so that we can be able to hold people to account. And we always say this to show the extent of how this is serious before they even go to retirement. We've had members who actually go to retirement before they can be brought to book, and this does concern us. So we're calling for efficiency within this space. Some of the details I can share in this forum is that there's extreme delays in just how we conduct investigations. We've seen some that are as old as a decade. It takes us sometimes 10 years to even conclude this. So it does concern us, and it does frustrate consequence management efforts and the improvements within the control environment. Also, we've had cases where our 2 internal audit capabilities, one which sits within SecDev's area and one which sits within the IG environment, primarily servicing the uniformed or the core business or the sensitive areas. They've reported to us shortages of staff, so they need to be capacitated. In some cases, they've even cited insufficient tools of trade, fuel shortages, and just delays in obtaining the necessary security clearances. These are some of the concerns that we are raising. We've raised this to SecDef and to the minister, of course, to say whilst we work within austerities, but we need to make sure that we identify critical areas where we need to intervene to prevent our internal auditors from being unable to do their day-to-day work. If I go To the next one, we'd like to highlight through you, Chair, is that some of the critical areas that have been reported to us is within some of the depots that the department has. And what we're calling upon is that once we've observed those findings, and of course details would be shared in the in committee with the committee. But what we can share in this space is that there is a need, having looked at the depots, to maintain adequate and effective controls across all our storage depots at all times. This is an improvement area, and it's a risk that we need to address with urgency. Also, the issues around the OHS, which would talk to our air conditioning systems. I think it's been in the papers, even the state of our Air Force building, which is unserviceable in terms of air conditioning. Some allowances which have been paid to members who should not have received payments, and those who were deserving were not paid. So crossing of wires there, we've seen it happen. And also there's no proof in a number of cases that investigations are being conducted to hold members in areas where they've not done what there was expected of them, to make sure that we instill discipline. So those are some of the areas, Chair, that I'd like to share as coming from the IEG side of our internal audit. The last one, perhaps, which I'll be very quick on, is the issue on policies, that we need to continuously review and update our policies. And what has been raised also by IEG as far as the logistics division is concerned is the issue of payments, even though the leases have expired, and that would feed into irregular again. And the issue of the 19.5 million there, where basically we're talking where DOD had leased and had paid rent to the headquarter board, okay, for premises that belonged to the department. There was a court order on this matter, and therefore the DOD ended up in that scenario incurring irregular expenditure to the tune of 19.5 million from those years, 2010 to 2022. And these are some of the areas where we're leaking resources, and therefore we need to see measures to be able to reclaim and get the money back. Also, we've seen leased infrastructure, which was occupied without valid commercial agreements. So just managing our lease register to make sure that there's lease agreements, that we collect what's due to us, and that no persons illegally occupy or don't service their commitments there. If we come to the internal audit side, the one that sits within SecDef, they've also raised a number of issues. They were slightly behind by media, and they've assured us that they'll certainly be catching up to complete their plan before end of the year. But in terms of their performance information audits, what would like maybe to highlight to you, Chair, is that there are concerns around SAS Saldanha, which have yielded to date 1.5 million rands worth of unauthorized expenditure. And also in the Lipalale Training Center, that there were auditees who failed to make available the required evidence, which would translate into scope limitation for auditors. And in the nursing home in Bloemfontein, there were students there, 10 of them at the time, who had been sitting basically available since 2022 September, and they had not been trained as yet due to some delays in the accreditation processes. There's some of the concerns that have been brought to us, just to share some of them. Also in the area of repairs and maintenance processes in terms of our facilities, generally, Chair, there is an issue with our infrastructure, and hence the OHS concerns that we do need to look after our infrastructure to make sure that it is up to date, it is repaired, it is maintained, and of course that does talk to budget issues as well. It talks from policies and standard operating procedures that actually govern that space in terms of defense works formation that need to be put in place, and also just to have a schedule of maintenance as to when we shall do maintenance that needs to be made available. And also just the regular conditional assessments reports. There was no evidence that that was done, and it could easily then make it impossible for us to know which area is due for refurbishment. I'm not going to go through all of them, but maybe the ones that I can highlight further is the issue of projects not being completed within reasonable time, and lack of professional services within that space to complete the projects on time. And this, in the main, it just summarizes the infrastructure challenges we have right across, and that requires urgent attention. If I go to the reserve force, there also were some concerns, and I think it's captured in the legacy report. There are some issues here also that we'd like to share with the committee. This talks to contracts not signed by the department, yet members are being called to come and serve. So we need to tighten up. And I think AG has raised some of the issues as shared by the department before. The issue of just making sure that we do approve before members get either extensions to continue serving or even are called up, to make sure that the number of days to what is paid ultimately, they must reconcile. No differences there should be experienced, and call-up instruction number of working days exceeded without motivation, where they stay longer than they were initially recommended to stay, and there's no motivation for that extension. Also, we've seen irregularities around leave management and members not being able also to perform core functions of the reserve force, and some have got lapsed health assessments. And also there's members who are still being utilized, yet they've got criminal records, include serious matters of rape, attempted murder, and so forth. So there is a need to clean up our database of reserve force members, so to make sure that these, again, as the Constitution demands, have got the highest level of discipline and that they'll be able to execute. But also the administration of this process is something that we need to look at. We are aware, Chair, of the issue of the Reserve Force Council, which is reported to be not in full force, not in place right now. So there are vacancies that we've noted in the space, which also could feed into this area not having the proper oversight. And we've taken note and we'll be also following up on those areas. In terms of some of the areas that talk to core business as well, the maintenance, there was an audit done on the maintenance and repair of the frigates at one of our stations. For example, in the naval base in Durban, we found that those facilities were not fit for occupation. And there was even payments made for refurbishment or upgrading, amounting to about 10 million, which were paid in advance, instead of being paid in tranches as they complete the work. If I go to the contract at log division, the management of the contracts there, we've engaged suppliers who are not tax compliant, and AG will pick up on that. It will become irregular. Vetting of suppliers was not done as it should have. We're operating with sensitive, in a sensitive environment. So every supplier should actually be vetted, and some of those were not done. Also, we've not always paid our suppliers within 30 days, and that's an automatic finding, and it does have an impact negatively on small business. And so it's something that we absolutely frown upon. It's a non-compliance. Also, there's been no legal opinion obtained for formal contracts, just to make sure we tighten up and don't have any exposure legally that will come back and open the department to litigation. And there was no SLAs in some cases. And again, the monitoring of those SLAs or contracts was not being performed. This slide, Chair, I'm not going to go too much. I've seen that the committee has engaged with the AG, but we thought let's just list the material irregularities which have been discussed, have been brought before the committee, and a number of these, in fact, have moved on. They are with other law enforcement agencies, whether it's a Hawks or perhaps Public Protector, and at various stages. But these are what have been raised as a record, and the department will also monitoring as audit committee that they respond appropriately as expected by the AG within those timed deadlines, so that we don't have this escalating into levels where we might have, for example, the sector being held personally responsible. So I thought, let me just list these, but I'm sure the committee is well aware of them. If I go to conclusion, what we'd like to say to the Honorable Chair and the members is that DOD actually needs to urgently implement measures to demonstrate that they do take the assurance providers seriously by implementing recommendations within agreed upon timeframes, And as a reference I made earlier, the delays in putting action plan that we can look at and monitor and follow through is what makes us not to be convinced that the department always takes assurance providers seriously. So we're calling upon for these structures to be responded to. Also, this would talk to implementing the risk mitigation plans, internal audit findings, and even aging recommendations. Also, the performance management, discipline management, accountability, and consequence management are areas that require urgent improvement and attention for the department to turn itself around. We've been qualified for a number of years now, Chair, and I think if we're going to break that qualification, these are just some of the areas we need to focus on so that we don't regress on what already is a qualified state, because our aim was to take the department to unqualified and then clean administration so that also we can be able to improve on our service delivery and achieve our mandate. And further, Chair, we're saying unless the department adopts a full ethics management approach alongside committing to zero tolerance to fraud and corruption, which is driven by leadership commitment and capable forensic and investigative capabilities, this department would continue to be consumed by rampant acts of fraud and corruption. And this is on the background that it takes us too long. I think we've referred to it. It's frustrating. And we've said to this committee before that even the constitution of the boards of inquiries, where it's made by the leadership within the same structure, issues of independence and become matters that we need to look at. So therefore, we need to send a strong signal to be able to respond efficiently, independently, so that we are seen to be sending signals of zero tolerance to fraud and corruption. Also, the department, Chair, we believe needs a revised defense strategy, which reconciles to the shrinking budget appropriation in order to address what is quickly appearing, based on our 3 year, we've been here for 3 years, what is quickly appearing to be a systemic defunding of the defense force. This is a term I think we've used before, and I think this really is of concern. As I said earlier, we have a situation where we've got boots on the ground, people employed, but we don't have COE provision for those members. The question is really, truly speaking, what do we expect the department to do? So we are very concerned, and hence we talk of the systemic defunding of the defense force. It becomes a national security issue, and it's really detrimental to our sovereignty and our security as a nation. The risk of the defense force not meeting its targets, performance objectives, and the outcomes has never been this elevated. We've seen, for example, a number of cases where they're required to do certain performance activities. They just simply can't, because we don't have the necessary prime mission equipment that's available. For example, if I just mention one, the number of hours our members need to spend in the sea on the Navy side. If we don't have, they can't go out, and therefore it makes it almost impossible for them to even achieve the most basic to keep that capability within the department. And we're calling on immediate redress through deliberate measures by all stakeholders, and looking upon this committee as well, Chair, and Treasury, to be able to assist us to prevent what we can call as a systemic defunding. In fact, Chair, this is so serious to us as Audit Committee. I think that the additional time to just augment how much of a national security risk this is, it's almost bordering on demilitarizing South Africa, and that's how important I'd like to highlight this matter. The other issue, Chair, I would like to talk to is a defense review, which was done last in 2015. I think there's a process to have that reviewed, and just some of the points we've noted that is necessary to assist the department to address some of its critical challenges. The issue of the reporting lines between the chief of SANDF and the accounting officer, PFMA, has always been a point of it demands attention. And I think absolutely when we audited, PFMA becomes supreme. And yet when it comes to, for example, disciplining uniform members, there's absolutely nothing SACDEF can do. That can only be done in terms of how we operate by the chief. To see improvement, but I think it's something that in the legislations that govern our space, it would be something that I'm hoping the defense review would be able to get around as well. The spending on the mandate of the Special Defense Account and Defense Intelligence against the PFMA requirement for transparency, accountability, and governance. Again, Chair, we're raising this because this is our number one or leading qualification paragraph. It continues being there, however, immaterial as far as the amounts are concerned. And I think there needs to be clarity as the defense review process gets underway as to how do we deal with the issues that are sensitive vis-a-vis the PFMA requirements. Also, the very old archaic ICT infrastructure, which is disjointed and hampers the automation and the digitization of our processes, making it almost very difficult to execute our mandate, is areas that also needs attention. And I did mention, Chair, that the funding becomes a critical issue, and it exposes us, of course, if we're talking archaic systems, anyone will tell you that it opens us to cybersecurity issues as well. The issue of unfunded mandates, it does undermine the department's ability. So even though, Chair, we can come hard on saying the department must clean its house, and we've seen a lot of weaknesses across, but this issue of not being funded, as we mentioned, currently we're standing with unfunded COE, but we know that there's been a deployment, for example, to the DRC, and to date, or the last time we checked, that was unfunded, and it's totaling 2.5 billion rands, and it must come somewhere out of what already is cut funding for the department. It does concern us, and actually it does also jeopardize the ability to fill critical vacancies, invest in prime mission equipment, whether you're talking servicing, maintenance thereof, and it really talks to the core of what we call defunding, demilitarizing the space, and it does concern us. The last part, Chair, as I conclude, I thought as part of the conclusion, let me just highlight some of the obligations of the very quick, is that if I make reference once again to Section 38 of the PFMA, which demands of us to look at the internal control environment, risk management, and all systems to make sure that the department is effective and efficient. And if I open up what internal control really points to, maybe the highlight I want to bring is that last part, which talks to compliance with laws, regulations, policies, and Department of Defense instructions. I'm bringing this slide because I think it's important, because traditionally, Chair, the Audit Committee has moved from being a PFMA or finance-focused committee. We talk to issues of performance, we talk to risk management, we talk to compliance as well. And the purview of our compliance monitoring, it's not only limited to PFMA, but it actually goes all the way from the Constitution, every single part of the legislation, the Defense Act, to PFMA and policies. So it's quite a widespread responsibility. And just to make reference to this, which I picked up on the Constitution, this will be some of those cosmetic additions to the slide. I just thought, let me flash this, which talks to issues of discipline. And that's why I want to look at the performance and what is happening within the department. We always look to make sure that, for example, simple things as investigating one another, holding each other to account, making sure our boards of inquiries are effective, making sure that issues of paying back the money or disciplining are not delayed. It talks to that part. But also in the main, Chair, the issue of the primary objective of making sure that we are able to defend and protect the Republic and its territorial integrity and its people, and in compliance with the international laws. That's what the Constitution demands of us to do. I thought, let me throw this slide in. This was in the media in the last few days. This Babu Mdluli, the elder, 92 years of age, who had lost sight for about a decade or so, but his sight has been restored. This to me became a reminder that no matter how many qualifications as a department we have received in the past, no matter how, for example, we've failed to prevent the completeness of our asset register, no matter how much we've delayed disciplining one another, however poor our consequence management is, however dilapidated our infrastructure may be, however much defunding we've experienced in the past, we can turn the tide. And we're calling upon all of us, including this committee, to perform the surgery on the department so that we don't have a slow death blind And this is what this slide is talking to. So we do need to talk to the issues of prime mission equipment to make sure that the funding that is not available, it does not compromise our prime mission equipment. It does not compromise our ability for digitization, that we're still the most manual department in this land, and that the issues that are more operational, perhaps, that we've seen in the space coming up, whether we're talking fuel supplies, the rations, whether we're talking just the upkeep, the maintenance of every necessary tools of trade, especially prime mission equipment. This is a slide that says a surgery can still be done to rescue this department so that it experiences what we have seen the Army is capable of. This is literally the pictures I'm going to share as I conclude. They are part of our members, part of our, they are our own pictures, in fact. And the Army has this obligation, which is very heavy on them. So they continue defunding, but also not looking at executing the recommendations that come from risk, internal audit, and the AEG, and all the oversight structures. It would compromise the ability for us to have these men and women being able to do this work. It goes also to our naval capabilities to say we have a constitutional duty to be able to protect and defend the Republic and its territorial waters and resources. And the defunding, it will compromise and will never be able to maintain these kind of facilities. And this is one of ours. And as to where it is now, it's a subject for another day. I can continue. This is one of our own as well. We're looking forward to seeing these even continue to go through our skies and protecting the integrity of our airspace. But if we continue to defund, these may be grounded. We'll never be able to see them again. And therefore, our constitutional obligations will be undermined. And even the work of SAMs, they have a critical duty to play. And that's why to us as a committee, it does concern us a great deal, the issue of funding. And the last one, Chair, is this slide, where it says we all are legally bound to ensure that the department and SANDF complies fully with its constitutional obligations and the Defense Act of 2002 through adequate funding, I must emphasize, of its mandate, non-negotiable clean governance, and impeccable performance and service delivery. Anything less raises constitutional breaches and non-compliances which threaten national security and our sovereignty directly. And I'll leave it there with appreciation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for your presentation. And it's certainly helpful in that we can see the journey traveled together. You can also see the impact of the department not maintaining the necessary controls and where there are weaknesses in risk management. And so I'm happy with your presentation. And in your presentation, you've also highlighted the importance of the internal audit unit, as well as the internal audit committee, and more as a tool, a very critical tool for the accounting officer to maintain an efficient and effective organization. So you disregard them, you do it at your own peril. And thank you very much for this presentation. Now, after I've made the presentation and having seen the presentation that was made before you, the audit action plans, I'm asking myself, and to what extent are those audit action plans responding to the matters that you have raised in your presentation. Can I say they are 80%, 70%, 100%? And because I must also get comfort that the department is responding to treatment. And the only way that will assure me that they are responding to treatment is to see them coming up with plans to deal with all the matters that you have presented. That unless they do that, some of the issues will keep coming up and becoming a recurring audit issues, both from the internal audit unit as well as the Auditor General of South Africa. So I don't know. Maybe at some point the SecDef must
No. Is it only me that has lost a chairperson, or is it?
We can't hear him anymore.
Yeah. Honorable Mutle, are you going to take over in the meantime?
Okay, I'm back. Thank you very much. Apologies.
Well done. Thank you.
For some reason,
Thanks.
this eliminated me. I was actually saying, I don't know to what extent are the two, is the department.
You are.
Hello? I'm not audible.
Yes, Chair. We hear you. You can proceed.
Yeah, yes. I was I was actually concluding that when you comment a SecDef, you must give us assurance that the the audit action plans do really fully cover the areas as identified by both the internal audit unit as well as the Auditor General. Because unless that happens, some of the issues will keep coming up as we move forward. Maybe let me leave it at that for now, and then ask members to make comments. Mr. Mara, I see your hand.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you to the Audit Committee on this report. I must be honest, this is not a nice report, but it's a necessary report. It's one would have liked to see at the end of the 6th Parliament that there was more responsible responses, which unfortunately not. And in my opinion, there's quite a big disjunction between the previous report that we have seen and this one. And to a certain extent, we always talk about, and the Minister has also talked about, the Department of Military Veterans being a dysfunctional department. If you look at this critical report and the problems in this department, it seems like this department is also becoming a dysfunctional department. In my opinion, Chair, the two major issues that I've picked up is the position of the Secretary of Defense as the accounting officer and the CFO. I know that the current incumbents are acting, so it is always difficult to operate with acting people in such important positions. We have been assured a number of times over and over that they are busy finalizing this. We have not received any confirmation that a adequate accounting officer permanently and the CFO have been appointed, whether it's the current ones that have applied or new ones. So that is a major problem. I want to ask the Audit Committee just one matter, and I have asked it with the previous report as well, and that is with regards to conflict of interest and doing business with employees or at arm's length. I don't know if you've picked up in the previous presentation where I've asked a question specifically with regards to arm's length conflict of interest, and it seems like nothing is being done to that. Have you looked at that? Is that a concern of yours, that we have got so many, it seems like, uniform members who have only resigned as directors, but we have got no assurances whatsoever that they are not involved with those companies who have contracts and business arrangements with the department. There's someone in the background that is very, very noisy and is very disturbing.
So, Lehoro, please switch off your mic. Lehoro, please switch off your mic. You may go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. The other observations, I think we cannot other than agree with those observations. You have captured exactly what I think we as a committee has drive very hard on a consistent basis. We have given the opportunities ample times to the department and the minister to say that these are the issues. We have to address that. We have to rectify that. And despite many assurances and talks of financing and all of that, we know where we stand. So that is no secret. So just on that one question is mine. And then should something not happen with regards to your recommendations and findings, what can you do about that if it's not addressed? And what is your recommendation or advice to us in terms of what we should do if there are no responses to that? Because you know that you have made these findings, and we can confirm that we have expressed these concerns over and over and over. Thank you, Chair. But this is devastating news, unfortunately.
Thank you very much. Any other colleague want to make a comment? Chair? Yes, sir.
Thank you. The Honourable Marez covered most of what I wanted to say, but I think what we need to say honestly is that this type of report puts us on level ground again, and we're able to get better from there. So I think it's good. But remember, any audit plan, internal audit plan, has to be vetted by the Auditor General. So that process still has to happen. But thank you, Chair. I really appreciate the in-depthness and the process of putting this audit report forward for us to enable the committee to be thorough in its job. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bond. Sagdef, do you want to make a comment on your observations, or make an observation on the presentation, as well as deal with the comments the colleagues have made?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report from the Audit Committee. The Audit Committee did share the report with myself, and was also sent to the team. We do note some of the issues that he's raising. We must just remember that this report is up to September, and since then, some of the information that we already shared with the members in the first presentation is the current state where we are now. For example, I'm just taking an example. The report of the chair speaks about 21 units that they don't have delegations, but we reported, and we're still reporting that.
Sorry, Sagdef. I don't know if I can hear her clearly. Is that on this side, or is it a general problem?
It's a general problem. It seems like the SecDep is not close to any microphone.
Oh, I see. Secretary, please bring your mic closer to you.
Okay, I'll move chair to another chair. Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me better now? Chair, can you hear me better?
We can hear you loud and clear, Secretary. Loud and clear now.
Okay, thank you very much. I was saying the report first. I must thank the chair of the audit committee for the report. It was shared with myself, and I think that it was sent to the chief as well and the minister, but the minister did not have a chance. We had arranged that the chair meets with the minister as well. But unfortunately, the minister has a bereavement, and therefore this could not happen. We accept the report, Chair. We're just reminding members that this report is a 6-monthly report, so it's up to September, and therefore the disjuncture that members see would be because in some areas we have improved and we have moved, because what we are presenting is more current in terms of the measures that we are applying to deal with issues that were raised by the Auditor General and obviously are also appearing in the report of the Audit Committee. I'll just make an example that, for example, the issue that is raised by Honorable Motle about 21 units that don't have delegations. Currently, that has already is now less than 21. I think we are at 19, and there are, or even less. The reason why you will have this situation is, one, the delegations are issued per person, to a person and not to a post. And therefore, if the OC leaves and there is a new OC, it means that OC must apply for a delegation. So that will be counted as having no delegation in that unit until they have applied and we have done all the verifications in terms of whether that unit complies. And some of them I indicated that the reason would be they are fixing certain areas of non-compliance that need to be fixed in order for them to have to be given a delegation, and therefore they also need to reapply for that delegation. So the numbers will change from time to time depending on how things are happening. Chair, I would also allow members to, I don't want to deal with each one of this because it will sound like we are being defensive. But I would like the CLOC to just indicate how far the issue of the plans, infrastructure plans and maintenance plans. And that will be Major General Nyangasia. And other major issues we are taking into consideration, Chair. We have explained why we have irregular expenditure, and I don't think I'll have to repeat that. All I can say is that we have moved since this the period under review, and we have improved in certain instances. With the Strategic Risk Management Committee, which is required. We had, I think I indicated before, we did have, or we do have this committee, but we had, because of the sensitivity of information, we had applied from National Treasury to exempt us from appointing an independent chair, which will be from outside due to the nature of the risks that we deal with. That's why you have non-public and public. However, of recently, I think about 2 years ago, we were now forced to get an independent chair from outside the department, which we have done, and the minister has recently signed on the appointment of the independent chair of the Strategic Risk Management Committee, which is very important in terms of overseeing the implementation of mitigation of risk in the department. Then I'll give, because most of these are in the procurement environment or in the facilities environment, just to indicate to the members where problems are. In terms of the vetting of companies, you have instances where with very big contracts, they will go to DI for vetting. But we are not disputing the fact that from time to time there might be slippages, but the vetting does happen. When it comes to tax clearances, what usually happens is that at the time that the contractor applies or submits tenders, whatever the right name is, they are tax compliant. But at the time of the award, the clearance might have lapsed. And therefore, in that instance, we then give them an opportunity to go back and get a new clearance. But the department does not pay unless there is a valid tax clearance. The department does not pay unless there is a valid tax clearance chair. Then I'll allow Major General to deal with the facilities, especially the maintenance plans and so on. And I'm not defensive, but to link the debt, what we were submitting is the attrition rate in the department. And those numbers that we have submitted were submitted by HR are both military and civilian. So it cannot all be ascribed to facilities, people who live in facilities. It can be various reasons why those people died. So through you, Chair, but we will look, I'm making a commitment that we will look again and at the report and see what can we take into our current risk assessment. We does have risk assessment in the department. The plans that we submit, the APPs, already will have a risk register that would have been approved by the General Defense Staff Council, which is the highest authority that approves the risk that will go into both the non and the non-public and the public view when it comes to risks. Through you, Chair, facilities.
No, maybe let's not go down that route today, SecDef. I think the purpose was to receive this briefing and for you to know that there are these issues. And but if you say that some of them have been dealt with, it's fine. We'll leave it at that for now, so that it's not an opportunity to respond today. I'm saying this, but I'm subject to the correction by the colleagues. I'm saying this because next week I've asked the Auditor General to come back just to give us progress you are making in addressing audit matters based on the status of records review. We also want them to give us the status of material irregularities as raised in their audit report. How far has that gone? And so those are matters that we want them to come back to us on, so that we close the year having this picture. So what you presented as audit action plans and what the audit committee has presented and what the AG will be presenting next week will basically be completing the picture of how things look in the department. And I also don't think we should engage in further discussion with you on those areas. We hope that the next committee will pick up on them. And but I thought that we should know where we end. We should all know where we end our year on matters that have been raised. But there's one point I can't really not ask it be addressed. Yes, we have accepted begrudgingly that the SCM is located outside the CFO environment, and but the issue of qualifications, requisite qualifications, remains an issue, because people who are entrusted with the resources and the accountability on them, they must have the necessary qualifications to be able to do that. Otherwise, would actually be, flocking a dead horse. And also whether they have the necessary tools to do the job that they have been appointed to do wherever they are. That analysis I have not done. Maybe at some point it must be done, but it's late now in the term to do it. And but I hope that at some point it will be done. And then the second point is the capacitation of the Internal Audit Committee, and vacancies were mentioned in other environment. I'm not too sure if the Internal Audit Committee is adequately capacitated, but I can see that they've been acting and very active this year, and judging by the presentation that Leander has made today. So maybe on these two areas, what can we do to get assurance that there's requisite capacity in the SCM practitioners wherever they are? And the two, what is the level of capacitation in the internal audit unit? Maybe let's deal with that. But I said I'm not allowing the department to respond at this point, but I'm subject to the committee, overruling me on this one. Committee members, what do we do? Can we just leave these issues for netting at the moment?
Chairperson, yes, I tend to agree with you that obviously the idea is for us to take note of this, and it's our observations. Yes, I've had that one question to the committee that I must just respond to, please. Otherwise, this is hopefully for us to take forward, and then I agree with you, if we can combine it with next week, that we can get a bit of a better picture of this. But at least our observation, it does not look good, and it ties in with our observations over time of the concerns, I think, that we have identified. So the committee the audit committee has done well, I think, to at least show us that we were not on the wrong track, and the matters that we have identified were actually correct. So it actually strengthens our position and our legacy report, and the fact that we have done, I think, a proper job of identifying these things, and that we are on the track, and hopefully the next committee will take over, and hopefully many of the current members will be there, so it is not starting from scratch again. So besides the one question that I've asked them, I tend to agree with you on that. Thank you.
Okay. No, thank you very much. Any objection? No objection. All right. Just deal with those matters, SecDef and Mangugu, and we'll leave it at that. But we are meeting again next year to have a bite on it, but from the angle of the Auditor General. Surely she'll reflect on all these matters that we have spoken about today. SecDef, yes.
Chair, the issue of arm's length and not at arm's length, I answered it in the. So if the Honorable Mare wants the view from the chair, I think the chair needs to respond to, because it sounded like he wanted a view of the chair.
Okay, you are right. But you are right. On the capacitation of the internal audit unit, as well as ensuring that the team in the procurement, the procurement practitioners, SAM practitioners have the requisite skills to do the job, as well as the necessary tools. What can you say on that one?
Chair, I agree fully that one needs to match the skills, the qualifications with the job. And that's why we're trying this training. So that one I agree. The capacitization in the environment of internal audit, I did explain to the audit committee that we had somewhat of a standoff with when it comes to the appointment of Kaye. And the standoff was that because the DPSA works on benchmarking, and in the public service, there is no Kaye that is at DDG level. Then they refused that we appoint at DDG level, and they wanted us to downgrade the post. And we had several meetings in which we explained the uniqueness of the environment, the amount of assets that this person will be auditing, the amount of budget that this person will also be expected to, but that we didn't agree. We didn't agree at all. They still felt that they wanted at DDG at chief director level. Now, what complicates matters is that this post, it was at DDG, but it didn't have chief directors. Now, according to their rule book on how you structure, you cannot have a DDG without chief directors. And therefore, we had to go back to the drawing board to do a fresh work study. So in order to go back, because they are not necessarily saying no, they are saying you cannot, because it's not in the public service. But at the same time, you need to correct this and have chief directors, and then we can have a different argument. What I have indicated that I will do, because the DDGs go through DPSA to cabinet, what I said I will rather, if the minister allows, I would rather do is that we appoint a Kaye in the meantime at a chief director level, whilst we are working on a structure. If when we are done, the job evaluation comes at DDG level, then it will be advertised, and then the incumbent of that post can also apply for the post. So in the meantime, that's how we can resolve the matter of the Kaye.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Mangugu.
Thank you, Chair, once again, and thanks for the questions from the honorable members as well. Chair, maybe let me start with where SecDef has ended. We very much, Chair, are part of the consultation process in the appointment or even any movement in the chief audit executive role per our mandate. So we've had the discussions with SecDef, And also, we certainly would support the move to fill the vacancies at the current levels at the chief director, so that as a study ensues, once DPSA then concurs for that to be elevated to DDG, then we can be able to actually advertise to fill that DDG one. But to leave it vacant for this long, it's what continues to concern us. And maybe the other part of your question was general vacancies within internal audit. There remains vacancies, Chair, in terms of outside just the head of audit, amongst the capacitation of internal audit. We always look to make sure that they have, especially the specialist skills in terms of finance auditors or ICT auditors and the like, to make sure that they can give assurance on those specialist areas. There is room to improve there, but what we've achieved over the last 3 years is to see both internal audit capacities, whether the one under IG or one under SecDef, a strong collaboration as part of the combined assurance to make sure that amongst the two of them, we're able at least to cover much ground, but there's still some work there that can be done to improve. One of the things you spoke about is whether the department is responding to treatment. I think, Chair, if I were to sum up maybe my response, I would say the department, I think, is in a positive space in the sense that it is aware of what the treatment it must take. But as far as to whether we are seeing the results of the treatment, I don't think we're there yet. I think we probably at very early stages, purely because there's reception, there's openness, there's basically moves to hold each other accountable so that we can be able to finally implement these recommendations. Hence, earlier I referred where we had positive feedback when SecDef and the CFO referred back the action plan, which basically was not of the right quality because it was not talking to root causes. That gives us the comfort to say management has taken note. They are putting plans in place to make sure that we see a turnaround. But I think it's still early days for us to say that they're out of the woods. I think there's a lot, especially, Chair, if you look on the performance side and core business, I think there's a lot of risk that we still have to face there. Chair, in terms of your comment on the SM being outside, I think that point is maybe responded to, that we agree with you, that if you leave it outside of finance, the very least you can do, make sure it stands up to quality in terms of full capacitation to do exactly what it would have done, even if it was within finance. And that's where work is ensuing. But again, I think time will tell, and we're looking closely as to whether the department is able to first prevent irregular, and if it does happen, whether we're able to quickly move to clean it up and make sure we hold people accountable. On the issue, Chair, of conflict of interest from Honorable Marais, the way I'll answer it is that we have, as a committee, Chair, called on the full implementation of the public sector ethics management framework, which would ensure that there's proper vetting of all personnel, especially at SCM, without exception, top management, and this can be filtered down as resources permit. And the department is in a better position because defense intelligence would be able to assist, unlike in the civilian side where everyone has a backlog on state security. So we've got our own internal capabilities to do our own vetting. And this is part of the implementation fully of the ethics management protocols. This would include also, Chair, making sure that there's declaration of interest on a timely basis as demanded by the law. But maybe to answer directly to the question, what we've called upon is that when AG comes to audit, they are able to run a query which can tell them whether every person who's being paid by the department from our payroll is, let's say, in the CIPC. And those capabilities as a department, we're not quite there. And we're encouraging the department to engage the AG so that we can be able to run those queries even before AG comes, where we can do it on a regular basis to go beyond just the director disclosure, to look at the shielding, to even look at potential other linkages of family members. But I think, Chair, because of the huge ICT challenges the department is having, this is remaining one of those ideals, and I think there's much more pressing issues at this stage. So more reliance is placed on at least implementing the full ethics management, responding to what AG is raising, whilst encouraging creating awareness within the department to say, members, thou shalt not trade, and make sure you desist. But we will certainly continue to encourage the department to use technology to be able to monitor that space. So at this stage, we are unable to give full comment as to whether this conflict issue is fully resolved. I think the department continues to press in there. In terms of the other question, in terms of if our recommendations and observations are not responded to, what can we do? Because of our makeup, that we are an independent advisory committee to the accounting officer and the executive authority, and we work closely with other oversight structures. Our presence, for example, here, Chair, is that we're putting upon you to assist us in a joint effort as part of what AG would call that ecosystem of oversight structures, to say, let's work together. Things that maybe we are not seeing, you can see. Things that we are seeing, we'll certainly bring them to our attention. And we're very much working closely with the AG team and with all assurance providers to make sure that we really, after all is said and done, we are all have the same interest that the department must improve. It must move forward. It must achieve its mandate. And that's where even management becomes part of that value chain, to say, despite we raising areas of improvement, we are on your side to say, how do we help you to move forward? So do your bit. We'll do our bit to continue the independent assessment and evaluation. Make sure you respond and take it seriously so that we can be able to make progress going forward. So in terms of if they don't respond, all we can do, Chair, is to continue to escalate to yourselves, to the minister, raise these issues to the AG. For example, this report that I went through today, it was not only copied to or sent to SecDef and copying the minister, it was also sent to the AG team. So they're fully much in the brief in terms of what we've raised, and they will also look at where they can do some validations or even take forward some of the issues that we're raising. And in terms of what we're asking the PC, this committee then to do, Chair, I'll put them in order, maybe I think of significance. Chair, it's looming large in my mind, the issue of at least where this committee is positioned, that please intervene, assist where you can with the funding issue. Whilst we may come very hard on the department to say, make sure that clean governance is what you achieve, make sure you perform to targets, make sure service delivery is not compromised and the achievement of your mandate, that's what we pay you for. But I think there is also a very heavy duty on us to say, if we incapacitate in the department by defunding them, they can't fill vacancies. They can't attract the right skills. They can't do the infrastructure refresh. They can't maintain the prime mission equipment. And therefore, it makes it almost like difficult to completely blame them, because we have a duty. And I think your weight in engaging Treasury to say you can't continue this defunding exercise unless you review the defense strategy and you tell us what exactly are you expecting. But as it stands, it's really, really concerning. So number one, I'll say, Chair, please assist in joining us to raise the defunding concerns, which today I've added, it looks even like demilitarizing the nation. The issue of vacancies, you've already touched on it, Chair, at least at that top level, SecDef, CFO, and on our side, Chief Audit Executive, and I think the committee has taken note. So the issue of vacancies, please assist us there. But also, Chair, the issue of monitoring the department continuously in terms of achieving its objectives from a performance management perspective. I think those key deliverables, which in this department are much more detrimental, because we're talking, Chair, national security issues. If this department, Chair, does not do what it's supposed to do, our national security risk is beeping red and we're all at risk. We know what's happening in Mozambique already. We see it in the media. We don't want that to creep further down into the south. And that's why, unlike maybe other departments, we really would call upon the department to pay due attention to the performance obligations, especially in terms of what the Constitution and the Defense Act demands, to make sure that those are met. The last one, Chair, not necessarily the least, is to continue to assist us in helping monitor accountability, discipline management, so that we can get the issues of a disciplined force totally checked out. From Honorable Bond, the last question I want to respond to, I think which I have perhaps, is that our report, certainly AG is very much aware of it. They've looked at its contents. We're always having in committees every now and again with them as well. So we work very closely together, and I'm looking forward to actually hearing their status of records review, which would be much more carried forward from our last assessment to where exactly we are. Thank you, Chair. I'll leave it there with appreciation.
Thank you very much for that. We agree with you 100%. We are aware of those issues and that they are very pressing and they require constant monitoring, and where intervention is needed, we will live up to that. I think we've started doing it, intervening on the funding aspect, funding side of the matters. So we'll leave it at that for now, and thank you very much for your presentation. I must say you stand invited for next week when the AG come to present on progress the department is making on addressing the audit matters as identified in the status of records review, as well as progress they're making in addressing material irregularity. Thank you very much, SecDef. Thank you very much for your presentation today. SecDef, would you die in the trenches if we stand down the presentation on the ring fence budget till next week? I'm looking at time. Colleagues, can we stand that matter down to next week? It's just one item is now gone 26 minutes above our time.
Yes, sir. From my side, no problem.
No problem. SecDef, do you have any problem?
Chair?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Chair, I don't have a problem. I'm just want to indicate that I've looked at their presentation. They must also include the other ring-fenced funding, in particular the one that was allocated for force multiplication, or what we call technology on the border, which I have identified that it's not necessarily included in the presentation that we received initially.
All right. SecDef, take note of that.
Chair, firstly, this being deferred to next week, and secondly, yes, we will include the information. Thanks.
Colleagues, with that, then I think we can then say we have come to the end of the meeting, and thank everyone. We've made this meeting a success that it is. Wish you well as you step out of the platform. Colleagues, I think we've even dealt with the minutes. So let me just say this is the end of the meeting, and then say the meeting stands adjourned until we meet again next week. Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Recording stopped.